Yeah, I have three.
One better than
I'd like to call the November 26, 2018 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order at 6:30. We have an issue with this meeting. It was not properly noticed, and I'm going to turn it over to our town manager, and she will give us our options on how we can move forward tonight.
Thank you, Chairman. And so, things happen. I would say all of the public hearings that we're going to have tonight have been properly noticed. And 91A requires only, in order to hold a selectmen meeting, that you post notice of time, place, and and that you're having a meeting. Date, time, and place.
Yes.
Apologies. Which we have done through the public hearings. Now, that said, you could do many things. One is you could say that's all we're going to address tonight because we prefer transparency and the agenda to have been posted timely. It was not posted on the website until today, and it was not posted on the bulletin boards at all due to some vacation scheduling issues. It didn't get posted until, oh, well, that would be interesting.
The agenda itself.
But if the meeting's posted, we're okay.
If the meeting is posted, you do not have to post an itemized agenda, although most towns prefer to do that.
But you saw this selectmen's meeting posted on our website for tonight. Okay.
It's a regular calendar, it's a great event.
Okay.
The itemized agenda was not.
Oh, I think we're fine then.
I would recommend you go along. If you wanted to be overly conservative, as you and I discussed earlier, you could not take any public votes, but I don't think anything precludes you from taking any public votes.
Okay, I'm going to get a consensus of the board. I'm going to ask anybody who has an issue with us moving forward to speak up. Anybody who has an issue with us taking votes tonight, speak up. Hearing none, we'll go forward as if it was a regular meeting. But you said we could not do any non-public.
I believe in the interest of all fairness, you should not have a non-public session tonight.
So we're going to skip number one, asking whether we were going to have a non-public session or not, and we'll move right to number two, and that we have 3 sets of minutes. The first one is October 30th. This is a budget hearing. Does anybody have any corrections or changes? Hearing none, you do? Okay.
Page 3,
Yep.
under 0143192-113, Mr. O'Brien stated that this is the facilities management job description, that we are not going to, for clarity, I would like to recommend saying approve this year as opposed to not going to do.
Okay.
Any objection to that?
This year? No? Any other changes or corrections?
Hang on, I may have more.
Yep.
Page 7.
Yep.
First time it mentions my name. Mr. O'Brien questioned if this policy was written down, not done.
Okay. Anything else?
Hang on. Still cruising through. Page 14.
Okay.
About 3/4 of the way down the page, again, with the pleasure of the board. Mr. O'Brien stated this is a game, meaning not appropriate.
And you want meaning not appropriate?
Pardon? Yes. And that's all I have, Madam Chairman.
Anybody else have any changes? Can I have a motion to accept as amended? Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, next one is the November 5th. Again, it is a budget hearing. Does anybody have any corrections or changes? Hearing none, can I have a motion to accept as written?
So move.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, and the last set of minutes, November 7th, it was a regular meeting. Does anybody have any changes or corrections? Hearing none, can I have a motion to accept as written?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next item on the agenda is our public hearings. The first public hearing is the Friends of the Community Bandstand to hold outdoor concerts on July 6th, 13th, 20th, 27th, August 3rd, 10th, 17th, 24th, 31st, 2019, from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. at Kate Park and Wolfeboro Community Bandstand. Please state your name for the record.
Good evening. I'm Judy Pascal, and I'm on the Board of Directors for the Friends of the Wolfeboro Community Bandstand. We provide a summer concert series of free, professional, family-oriented performances on Saturday nights beginning in July and ending Labor Day weekend. This would be our 25th season.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak to this public hearing or this special event? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. I have just one comment. Your insurance rider will need to be updated in July, and when that happens, will you please send us one?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments or concerns from the Board of Selectmen? Hearing none, can I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the issuance of a temporary event permit to hold outdoor concerts on July 6th, 13th, 20, 27, August 3, 10, 17, 24, 31, 2019, 5 to 10 p.m. at Cape Park and Wolfeboro Community Bandstand.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You have your permit. Okay, and I imagine you're just going to stand there while I open up the next public hearing. The next public hearing is the Wolfeboro Park and Recreation and the Cape Park Band to hold band concerts on June 26th, July 3rd, 4th, 10th, 17th, 24th, 31st, August 7, 14, 21, 28, 2019, from 6:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. at Cape Park and Wolfeboro Community Bandstand.
Yes, again, I'm Judy Pascal, and I represent the Cape Park Band. We are Wolfeboro's community band. We're all volunteers and of all ages, and we all share a passion for music. So on Wednesday nights, we come together and meet at the bandstand and perform a concert geared towards families, and this will be our 28th season.
Wow. I know they're very well attended, too.
Always well attended.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak to this public hearing? Hearing none, I'd like to close the public hearing. Board members, do you have any questions or concerns? Hearing none, can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the issuance of a temporary event permit for band concerts on June 26th, July 3rd, 4th, 10th, 17th, 24th, 31st, and August 7th, 14th, 21st, 28th of 2019, from 6:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. at Kate Park and Wolfeboro Community Bandstand.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You have your two permits.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to open up the next public hearing, and I'll read the notice. The Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, November 26, 2018, at 6:35 p.m. at the Wolfeboro Town Hall Great Hall, 84 South Main Street, Wolfeboro, New Hampshire, pursuant to RSA 3195B, to accept the funding representing a gift to the town of the Wolfeboro Employees Christmas Party from anonymous donor in the amount of $15,000. It was posted at the town hall and at the library. I would like to make a correction to this notice. We are receiving $15,000, but all $15,000 is not going for the staff party. The majority of it is going to be going to support the welfare issues in our community. So we will have a good party, but I just want people to know that not all of it is going to go to our party. So I guess there isn't much to say other than for the board to accept a check, but I'll ask if there's anybody in the audience who'd like to speak to this. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. Board members, anybody have any comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the gift of $15,000 from an anonymous donor to the Wolfeboro Employees Christmas Party and monies to go to the welfare for Christmas gifts.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the next thing we have is the bulk vote, and all that's in the bulk vote is the November 9th, the November 16th, and the November 23rd weekly manifest. Can I have a motion to accept the bulk vote? Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, under new business, I'm going to change the order. We have some poor weather out there, and so I'm going to get some of the people up here right away. And the first one I would like to do is the appointment of a deputy treasurer, and we have our town treasurer here.
I had selected Scott Smith because of several reasons. One, that he was part of the cabal of the press gang in 2004 that convinced me I better, for health and all and everything else, run as a treasurer. And he's very knowledgeable of this area. It was interesting that after I acceded to he and his partner to run as treasurer, opened the door, and there was Pat Waterman out with her hand for the money, the $1 for registering. So Scott Smith is very knowledgeable.
Okay, any board members have a question for Mr. Burt? Hearing none, can I have a motion?
I'll move to approve John Burt, treasurer.
No, Scott Smith.
What's that?
Scott Smith as deputy.
Yes, to appoint Scott Smith as deputy treasurer for the town of Wolfeboro.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you, sir.
And I'll sign this and,
For all you've done for so long.
yes, very definite. Yeah, and you'll fill in the date and everything? Okay. Thank you, John.
Night.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, John.
The next item on the agenda was supposed to be the warrant articles, but I would like to move forward with the presentation on the CIP and let our planning director go. And we're going to start with,
We have a person here for that Kate Park wedding, if you want.
okay, I can flip that around. I will then switch one more time, and we have a request from Lauren Welch for a wedding at Cape Park on August 10th, 2019. Amy, do you want to present this?
My name is Amy Piper. I'm with Signature Events, and I have a client and her fiance who would very much love to have their wedding at Cape Park this summer on August 10th at 4 p.m. The bride is actually from this area. She's summered here for many years, and it would truly mean a lot for them to be able to get married in Cape Park.
I have only one concern. It was the number of chairs that she would be setting up, and we still need to be able to let the public walk through there. So you can decide, how you can make sure that that can happen.
Okay, and I have actually discussed this with her because her count could be anywhere from 120 to 150. So my suggestion to her is, considering it's probably going to be a brief 15, 20-minute ceremony, that we should probably just set up 24 chairs for elderly guests or anybody that, family that would need to sit. So if it's a possibility even for that, that would be wonderful.
I have no problem with that, but when I thought of 120 chairs there and letting the public get through, I couldn't quite picture it.
Right. Well, and even the setup time. The setup time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, do I have any other members of the board who have any questions or concerns? Okay, can I have a motion?
I move we accept the proposal of Lauren Roche and her fiance to use Cape Park on August 10th at 4 p.m. for their wedding.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And you can deal with the chairs.
Okay, great. So is there, I guess I should have asked this, is there a certain time that we would be allowed to set up the chairs?
I mean, the only thing that needs to happen is the public needs to be able to use it.
Okay.
That's my understanding. And board members, do you have any other concerns there? So if they need to do it a half hour, hour beforehand, fine.
Okay,
Just that people can walk through.
okay. And if it is inclement weather, we will not be
You
there.
will be
So, okay, great, thank you. The
Thanks,
bride will
Amy.
be thrilled.
Okay. Now we'll go back to that CIP presentation, and Kathy?
Sorry about that, but I thought that'd be a little quicker.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay,
We're moving this agenda all over the place, so why not?
Okay, my name is Kathy Barnard, and I'm here with Matt Sullivan on behalf of the Planning Board to present to you the 2019 to 2028 Capital Improvement Program that the Planning Board unanimously approved the plan at their November 13th meeting. As you all know, this is an advisory plan that's prepared yearly for you folks in the Budget Committee. It's a 10-year plan for the recommended municipal projects over $100,000 and spreads out the projects over a 10-year period while considering the needs of the town and the impact on the taxpayers. The plan was developed by the CIP committee, which is a committee of the planning board, with significant input from the town manager and all of the department heads. These CIP members, I just want to acknowledge them because they all work very hard. Linda is on representing the Board of Selectmen, Bob Lauman from the Budget Committee, Mike Hodder and I both serve as appointments from the Planning Board. And then we had 4 citizen members this year, and I think that worked well. Joyce Davis and Jim Schildnick have been on the committee for quite a few years, and then Suzanne Ryan and Paul Whalen were added to the committee. CIP starts in August. We meet with all of the department heads. The department heads present their projects in accordance with your guidelines. The CIP plan that Matt is going to go over with you has an explanation of the 2019 projects. Also, we have a list of the 2020 projects, so everybody has an idea of what's coming. And then this year, we included 4 placeholders that do not have any financial information attached to them, but they're projects that we know are coming ahead, and so we wanted them included in this 10-year plan. Also, there are 6 capital reserve accounts were discussed, and they're to be continued, or they're proposed to be continued. And all of this information is in that wonderful, not too easy to read spreadsheet. So I'll turn this over to Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Members of the board, I'm Matt Sullivan, the Planning Director. I have prepared a brief presentation tonight. You have a couple options. You can turn around to view the presentation. It might be the easiest way. Just a few figures that I want to show you that aren't in your CIP plan itself, but I've sort of prepared this with potential viewers at home and members of the audience as one of the stakeholders I think we want to engage with this presentation. Kathy did a great job of overviewing the purpose of the committee, the purpose of the process, and certainly the membership of the CIP committee. I was actually thinking as I was sitting here that I feel like I just left the Board of Selectmen presenting the 2018 plan, and I think that this is yet another productive process we've gone through this past year and really done an excellent job in preparing for the warrant article discussion that you're scheduled to have this evening, and certainly the Budget Committee will be looking at in the future. Just to reiterate a few points and also add some detail, the CIP process in Wolfeboro was actually started in 1987 when it was originally authorized by the voters. Mike Hodder, who is on both the Planning Board and the CIP Committee, did a significant amount of research on this, and the CIP process has looked many different ways in the many 30 years really between that period when it was first authorized. But really now I think we're beginning to increase the efficiency of the process and hopefully of the plan itself that we'll talk about in just a few minutes. Kathy said this in many different words, but really the idea here is to prioritize the capital projects in the context of the master plan. This is, at its core, a planning document, and I think that's important to keep in mind. The scope in the town of Wolfeboro, towns have some option here, but in Wolfeboro we've looked at this as a 10-year advisory planning tool, and we focus principally on our major capital projects and town expenditures, but we do have some exceptions to that rule, and I'll get into a few of those as we go through the CIP spreadsheet. Generally, we consider those projects to be those over $100,000, but in some cases, we recognize that multi-phase projects or even smaller projects have the impact of capital projects and would need to be considered as part of a warrant article, so that's important to keep in mind. As Kathy said, the projects are submitted by department heads. They're reviewed by the CIP committee. In some cases, projects go through multiple iterations of review with the committee and are refined as they go. Because of the timing of this process, because it starts in August, in many cases, the department heads are just beginning to settle in from their approvals from the March vote. So this is really their first opportunity to start thinking about what their capital needs might be going into the next year. So department heads really work with the committee to refine the scope of their projects actively, and I think that's a great part of our process here. Finally, we complete the draft CIP and the supporting documentation. You'll see lots of tabular information towards the back of the document. Hopefully you find that beneficial for considering tax impact, and if you have any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them and do the best I can to do that. So let's look at the 2019 project funding, and typically in Wolfeboro we've focused on the upcoming year funding almost exclusively. Obviously this is a 10-year plan, but there's a real focus on what the projects look like scheduled for 2019. So I've tried to break that down here. We have a pretty even split. If we look at the light pink up in the upper right-hand corner there, that's our general fund projects. These are cash appropriated projects that would have to be raised via warrant. Looking at 2019, we're looking at about 1.173 coming out of the general fund. Again, that's new cash appropriation. And it works out to be just about a quarter of the total project load when we're looking at our capital projects. Similarly, again, 24% for a slightly different number there, 1.13. You'll see that's scheduled to come out for the electrical fund project. These projects have no direct impacts on the tax rate because they're raised via the electric rates. But you'll see that's another quarter of our funding picture for 2019. In blue, you see an $800,000 planned expenditure, 17%. That's scheduled to come out of our settlement monies. That's through the sewer department. So you'll see some projects in the spreadsheet are funded via settlement. Those also have no impact on the tax rate because they are existing funds. The fourth and largest area there, and I think this is really a testament to the way that Wolfeboro has changed its financial approach for large capital projects, You have 35% or 1.7 thereabouts million dollars scheduled in 2019 to come out of capital reserve accounts. These are accounts that have been set up by the Board of Selectmen, I think very proactively, in the anticipation of capital expenditures that will need to be made. And you can see that we've sort of adjusted this funding picture so that we're making more expenditures out of them. So I think that's a real win for this process and for the town as a whole and the Board of Selectmen. Just to look back in history a little bit, and I believe this, and I apologize for people who've heard this presentation before, but I find this information pretty telling. This is a look at what the CIP has requested versus what the voters have approved in Wolfeboro. And you'll see, looking back to 2006, the CIP requested was potentially even more than twice what the voters ultimately approved through the voting process. And the way that I look at this and sort of this trend moving forward is that the CIP has come more into a line with what the voters are approving. And I think that's because the CIP process is doing a better job of informing our officials about what projects need to be prioritized in what years. So you'll see that that number moves more into alignment as the years go on there. And I think that's really telling, again, about the predictability and the usefulness of our process. Total CIP project costs. So here we are looking at the full 10-year scope of the plan. You'll see there's some variability, and unsurprisingly, as we get out towards those out years, really from 2024 out to 2028, you'll see that numbers generally drop. And the reason for that is because we just have less project load at that time. Typically, that's because department heads don't necessarily aren't aware of what their capital needs will be beyond the 5-year scope. But you can see that up into 2022 there, when we have a huge expected spike in CIP project cost, they're pretty confident through that year. That's the public safety building that's shown in there. If I see a few members of the board chuckling at that. That would be the year that the public safety building project would potentially hit per the CIP. But again, in those out years, there's more variability and less predictability because projects aren't necessarily known for the last 5 years of the CIP. Projected tax impact, and this is one important differentiation I want to make as opposed to our prior processes. You'll see that in the CIP spreadsheet we've looked at two important facets of our projects. One, the tax impact, which is obviously critical, but also the total expenditure associated with the project. And the reason those two numbers are important yet different is that in many cases, such as a capital reserve account, we're saving yearly $185,000, for example, to buy a piece of fire equipment, but the tax rate impact when that's actually purchased is not the full $1 million, for example, that piece of equipment will cost. You're really taking the burden of a large capital purchase and spreading it upon many different years on the voters. And therefore, the tax impact of a given project is going to be different than what the actual cost of the project is. Does that concept make sense to everybody on the board? Because I think that's an important one. In the past, we actually showed purchases out of capital reserve projects as a one-time large expenditure. That's really not the best way to do an accurate prediction for our tax rate impact. Okay? You will see some variability here, obviously, really between the $2 million of tax impact that we're looking at for the capital projects in 2019, going up to 4.2 in 2020, sort of level at 4 there in 2021, down in 2022, and then the rate impact goes up in 2023. And again, we have some variability moving into the out years of the CIP as shown there. We also look at bond debt service, and this is a sort of a simple way of looking at how the bonded projects within the CIP, bonded projects only, are projected to impact our debt service. So factored in here are our existing debt service payment and also those new bond payments. And you can see, as I just mentioned a second ago, that in 2023, that would be the expected year of the bond impact for a 2022 vote on the public safety building. You get a large spike there, bringing up the debt service to around $4 million of existing debt service. And that's a debt service payment, okay? Projected capital reserve balances. We did this last year, and for good purpose. We want to identify any areas where a projected expenditure out of a capital reserve account is expected to actually create a deficit. It's really important to look at this. We want to make sure that our capital reserves are strategically funded in a way that anticipate the capital needs over the 10-year projection of the CIP. Last year, we had a piece of fire department apparatus that was going to create that deficit, and we adjusted the funding schedule accordingly. You'll see here that generally balances are positive. The only exception being in 2021, you see a negative, and that's actually on the dockside parking lot. The reason for that is that the amount projected to be contributed to the existing Dockside Capital Reserve Parking Lot Fund will not equal the expected project costs that we have in the CIP, and therefore we have some options. We'll either need to increase the funding of the Dockside Capital Reserve, Dockside Parking Lot Capital Reserve, or potentially raise cash revenues in 2021 to actually cover the additional costs that have been projected by the Public Works Department. So this just gives you a sense that we want to stay really healthy in our capital reserve accounts moving forward. So let's look at a little bit more detail in the 2019 proposed projects, just dive in here a bit deeper. And I've designed these slides so that folks at home actually have a chance to sort of digest some of this information. I apologize, they're a bit text heavy, but if you haven't had a chance to look at the plan, this gives you a good summary. The project from the electric department, this is again funded out of the enterprise fund, is phase 2 of the phase 5 voltage conversion. This is specifically the substation construction on Lander Street. Total cost estimated at $1.13 million, and it's anticipated to be bonded, and there's a direct connection to our public utilities and infrastructure plan, our section of the master plan back in 2007, though we are updating that right now. You will be hearing more about these projects, obviously, in the months coming forward, but this is just the impact as it's shown in the CIP plan. Moving to the Public Works Department, we are scheduled, this is a good example where we have sort of a misalignment between the tax impact and the scheduled purchases. We're scheduled to purchase $370,000 worth of equipment in 2019 out of the Vehicle Capital Reserve. We obviously have a greater issue that's somewhat complicating this number right now, but this is the best number we have. But here again, we're only actually including a $170,000 capital reserve contribution, but we're purchasing $370,000 worth of equipment. So this is a good example where the tax impact is different from the project expenditure. Annual road maintenance, this is $800,000. I've listed the projects here, including Pine Street, Partridge Drive, some survey and engineering work on Bryant, High Street, and Park Street, College Road, Trotting Track Road, Key Wade, and North Wolfeboro Road, some remnants of our last year work as well. The total number here is $800,000, down $70,000 from the $870,000 that was appropriated last year. This is typically a cash warrant article that's raised by the voters, so it wouldn't be bonded. It would be a general fund cash appropriation. The Dockside Building Restrooms Expansion / Improvements. This is a project that was originally appropriated and approved by the voters in 2018 for $150,000. Due to some delays with the Public Works Department and some misalignment between actual construction cost and what was appropriated, this is projected to actually go into year 2019, and with it, a cost increase of $145,000 to a total project cost of $295,000. This is based on a revised construction estimate that's been received from Milestone, and I'll do my best to answer any questions on these again, but this is sort of a project that's recently developed into this reallocation. So I believe what the Board of Selectmen are going to potentially do is reallocate the existing 2018 appropriation to 2019 to cover some of that cost. But the remaining would have to be raised through a cash appropriation. The Dockside Dock Capital Reserve Account, this is for the Dockside docks specifically. Remember, there are two unique elements to this. There's the repairs, sort of the immediate repairs necessary to the bulkhead and existing docks. And then phase 2, if you will, is the potential expansion of the docks that has been projected for out years. After some discussion at the CIP level, what was resolved was to actually make a $175,000 contribution to the existing capital reserve account. And that would at least prepare us for a potential expenditure that we need to make in 2019 or 2020. We just want to continue to build up that balance so that we're prepared. The initial estimate that we received from Ty and Bond was shocking, to be frank, for both the existing and the extension repairs, somewhere in the realm of $1 million. So we need to at least be prepared to do the repairs to the existing docks so that we can address any imminent danger that may exist there or may exist in the future there. So I think that's critical to sort of keep this in two separate compartments as you look at this project. Pleasant Valley Road Bridge in Heath Brook. This is a somewhat complicated project from a financial perspective. It's because it's an 80-20 split with NHDOT. The total project cost is $1.4 million, thereabouts, 1.379. But some of this money has already been spent by the town. So ultimately, in 2019, there will be $148,000 that remains to be raised by the voters via taxes. But I think one thing that has to be discussed further is whether or not the warrant article will have to include the full appropriation for the project. I know that's the case with some large matched projects like this, so that issue may need to be resolved moving forward. But just to be clear, the impact of the tax rate would be the $148,000 that's a remaining balance from the town's portion of match there. And you've heard a presentation about this project just a few meetings ago. Dockside parking lot, this work scheduled hopefully for 2020. Again, this is that project I said we may potentially have a negative balance when we go through the project. So we'll have to analyze whether or not we want to do a cash appropriation out in the construction year or whether we want to potentially in an out year or future year increase the contribution to the capital reserve. But this is a $50,000 capital reserve contribution proposed for 2019. This is a good example of a project that it itself rises to the level of a capital project, but the yearly contributions don't by themselves actually get to that $100,000 level. Water department, we have no capital projects proposed for the water department in 2019. On the sewer side of things, we have the wastewater treatment plant upgrades. This is based on an asset management plan. And we regularly contribute $125,000 to it. In 2019, the project load is a bit smaller. We're expected to actually do $62,000 worth of work. So here, higher tax rate impact, but lower expenditure for the 2019 year because we're actually building up that capital reserve balance. And in 2019, this will be electric system upgrades. Last year, I believe it was SCADA system work. The RIB effluent disposal upgrades, this is continuing permitting work, engineering work, and development of construction documents for the RIB. As I said at the planning board meeting, if anyone hasn't had a chance to go, up to the RIB site, I really do urge you to contact the Director of Public Works, Dave Ford. I think he's very proud of what is potentially happening up there and the innovative solution that we're coming up with. And I would recommend that you reach out to him if you're interested in learning more. But for 2019, we're proposing $500,000 worth of work that needs to be done there, really looking at the design and engineering, which is a fairly complex solution that we're looking at up there, and really trying to understand it more and more on a daily basis. The wastewater effluent disposal updates and study, this is the one correction I'd like to make to the plan tonight. In the narrative of the plan, I indicated this is a $500,000 project. In the CIP spreadsheet, I had the correct $300,000, but I apologize, there was a typo there, so I'm going to amend, this is an administrative error, I'm going to amend that number to be $300,000, and again, these are for principally I&I work. This is principally for I&I work that's being done, and I know that the Board of Selectmen are very familiar with that inflow and infiltration work that's been done in the past to limit impact to the plant and the system. So that's $300,000 there. And this is, just a note, this is funded out of the settlement, and the same goes for the RIB effluent disposal upgrades. So neither of these projects have a tax impact to the voters. Fire departments, no projects proposed in 2019, though a regular capital reserve contribution of $186,000 is. That's a regular contribution, again, to build up that balance, and I believe they will be coming forward with a project in the coming year, in 2020. Police department, this is a new capital reserve that's being proposed. The proposed contribution to it would be $100,000 for a period of 4 years. The reason being there's a need to upgrade the dispatch console system. And I want to just point out that before we get to the next project, that need exists independent from the public safety building need, and that's why we're splitting this up from a funding perspective. Regardless of whether the public safety building moves forward in the year that's sort of scheduled in the CIP right now, this dispatch console will need to be replaced. So the police department, as part of their presentation and as part of the CIP committee's actual recommendation, decided that it would be best to begin saving capital now to be prepared for that system failure when it does happen. So that's one thing to point out here. The public safety building, I think we're all relatively well aware of where this project stands now. The price tag associated with it is $11.899. We're doing a lot of work to look at that number very critically and identify potential options. With that said, we know that there will be a significant expenditure associated with that project. We don't know what it will be, but because of that, we're actually looking at escalating the capital reserve contribution, starting at $100,000 in 2019, up to $200 in 2020, $300 in 2021, and then $400 in 2022. And the reason being, A, to have capital available to actually do engineering and permitting work for that project, but B, to actually limit the impact of a potential bond payment that would happen as part of this project, looking at out years. So this hopefully would do that by increasing the contributions and hopefully lessening the impact to the tax rate additionally. Kathy mentioned the placeholder projects, but we also just wanted to list the 2020 Horizon projects. I won't go through these in detail, just wanted to give you a list of what those look like. These are subject to change, obviously, as departmental needs are adjusted throughout the coming year, but this is what we're looking at for the year 2020, in addition to our regular capital reserve contributions. And hopefully you have that in your packet, so I won't take too long on this slide. The 4 placeholder projects, Kathy mentioned, we have the Libby Museum building improvements. There's a committee established for that. We're trying to identify what the scope of that project will be. We don't have a cost estimate at this time. Pop Whalen building study and phase repairs. Through the CIP process, we really recognized some critical issues that exist at Pop Whalen Arena, and we're trying to identify a plan to determine what the best solution is to those issues that are currently sort of manifesting themselves. If you've been to Pop Whalen, or are familiar with the history of this project, we had looked at some dehumidification remedies, but we're realizing now that there are some more significant roof-related issues and other climate control issues that need to be addressed before we move forward with any kind of dehumidification. So in 2019, I think our primary focus is just understanding this project a little bit more and working with Christine Collins, the director, to actually come up with a solution for this problem. Also in 2028, our furthest out year, we have 2 projects. The first being the MED generation / community center reuse. We're looking from an environmental perspective at both of these buildings right now. We need to identify the potential for reuse, and that's what we're doing in 2018 and 2019. But we're not sure when exactly a reuse is viable, and therefore we put this in an out year of the CIP, recognizing that fully something may change and it could be moved up to a more imminent year. Lastly, 2028. This is something that's really come strongly out of the draft master plan sort of effort. There is an interest in having a community center. Some mix of youth and senior, I think, is the focus right now. We have no scope for that. We have no location. We have no cost estimate, but we recognize that it's a community priority. So that's been placed in the 2028 year of the CIP, again, recognizing that that could change based on reprioritization or more clear need in the community. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I know I've covered a lot of ground, but hopefully the CIP spreadsheet is helpful to you as you move forward through the budgeting process. This is one of the first opportunities for department heads to look at their capital projects, and I think it prepares them relatively well for what they're about to go through, both the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee. Thank you.
Board members, do you have any questions? Dave?
You're proposing Allen Road. I think that Allen Beach Road really is in terrible condition. Can you put that on the to-do list? I mean, it's our most popular beach, and it's a complete mess. Have you been there?
The road down to Albee Beach, I don't think it's owned by the town. That's the issue with that. It's not a town-owned. It's a privately owned, and we go in and I believe grade it once a year.
Maybe we can get a permanent right-of-way on it or something.
Yeah, and one thing I'm not trying to not answer questions from the board members, but please remember, if you have specific questions about any of these projects, they're likely best directed to the appropriate department head, but like that, Dave, is a good example of something that it would be excellent to make sure that Dave Ford is aware of. Okay. But I'll definitely pass that concern on to him.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for the nice report.
Does anybody else on the board have a question? Paul?
Matt, I want to congratulate you for the analytics you did. It's very nice to see not just numbers, but what the numbers actually mean. And I think that's a very professional way to approach it. The out years appear to be, if you look at the spreadsheets, all of the out years appear to be kind of best estimates.
Yeah.
And so your out year analytics are best estimates. But having said that, the fact that you're doing stuff like that you're taking the time to understand impacts is great, and I congratulate you for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I enjoyed working on the committee. We worked hard. We had a lot of discussion as we tried to figure out where to place them and what to do with them, the different projects. But one of the things that affects this more than anything else, we have a lovely CIP, but we have to sell it to the voters. Yeah. And that's where we're heading at this point in time. So, any comments with anybody else?
Yeah,
Fred?
I'll just say, Thank you, Matt and Kathy, and everybody that was on the CIP here. Last week, they presented this to the planning board, and it was, I just want to let everybody know, it was very well received, and we unanimously voted to accept it, and so it could be presented tonight to our board, so thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Yep, absolutely.
Do you have anything else you want to do before you go?
I have two more on the agenda, I believe.
Why don't you tell me what they are, and I will move those up, and we'll get you heading home.
So the Phase 4 grant first, for
Okay.
the 319
And
Phase 4 grant.
that's on Wentworth?
That's correct.
Okay, let's hunt through here.
I can jump into it whenever you're ready.
Has everybody found it in their packet? I think we're still looking, a few of us.
That's this.
It's this
That's
one.
yes, and I'll explain what I'm looking for too, because I realize I just provided you with the grant application, so I want to talk a little bit about it.
That's it, right there. Okay, everybody ready? All right, Matt.
Okay. So you'll see, I'll start by saying that you'll see on the top of this grant application form that you've received for the Section 319 that this is a grant proposal that is due on December 7th of 2018. I was looking back through Board of Selectmen minutes to determine what exactly the process has been on the past with pending grant applications, and I was able to find some information, but for clarity's sake and transparency's sake, and for procedural sake, I wanted to come to you tonight before we apply and just quickly talk about what we're applying for, what the implications are for the town in advance of this potentially being approved, whereby it would have to come back to the board for approval and acceptance from the governor and council. So I just want to give you a brief introduction to this Phase 4 project and talk to you about what the town's role would be in it. Just to start off, though, many of you are aware we have completed two 319 or Section 319 water quality projects. These are funded through NHDES, which is really just a pass-through funding that comes from EPA as part of the Clean Water Act. We've sort of received a range of funding on these projects. This is a very significant project that we're looking at here, which I'm excited about, and I'll tell you why. But this would be the fourth of these projects. We're currently working on the third iteration right now, which is at Camp Bernadette and some improvements along 109 as well. So this is the fourth project, and we wouldn't be taking this on until year 2019, 2020, and 2021. So we're looking quite a ways out in the future when it comes to the construction period for this project. To get to sort of the financial part first, and I will get to the sites, but I just want to make it clear that what we have been pre-approved for, so we actually went through a pre-approval process with NHDES. We submitted a total project scope of $173,000. $100,000 of that would be grant funded. $39,000 would be what I refer to as soft match, which would be volunteer time. And then $34,000 would be a cash match requirement. We're currently in the process of talking to the association about how to share that cash match requirement. At this time, I think it's best, though, to look at it as a 50-50 split. So that would put us, that would create a demand of $17,000 cash between 2019, 2020, and 2021 that would have to be raised by the town. I am not requesting funding for this matching funding in 2019. I would propose to come back to the board in 2020 to get those matching funds, just to make that clear. And that's how we've traditionally done it with grants. So we went in with that pre-approval application, and to our surprise, DES said, please proceed with the full proposal. And what that means to us is that they're pleased with our ability to complete these grants. They recognize the importance of the three projects that you'll see in this application, and they believe that we have the capacity to do this together with the association. I think that's a critical piece. I don't think I myself would be able to do it, but the association members are critical to helping me get these projects done. And certainly have been to Dave Ford and Rob Hausman before me. So we are submitting the full $173,000 project. Three sites we're looking at. The largest and most impactful site here is Camp Birchmont, principally the beach that exists at Camp Birchmont. We believe, and you can see in here, there are some details about the actual total suspended solids and phosphorus loading that we believe are being contributed to the lake there. We believe that any improvements we could do there to potentially install a perch beach would be a massive improvement to water quality on Lake Wentworth. And I want to point out quickly, too, that although this does focus on Lake Wentworth, we're also proposing some funding to look at our Winter Harbor watershed as well. So this is just really an additional water quality project that the town is taking the lead on with the association. The second part of our project would be Fern Ave, and you can look at the details within the proposal here, but some improvements along Fern Ave, principally related to drainage and other issues there. And then the third would be Harvey Brook, which is somewhat comparable to the Fern Ave project, largely drainage improvements. And one thing I think that's important to keep in mind is we look at these sites as problem areas. We don't necessarily know the solutions right now, and that's exactly what this grant here is for. So if you ask me tonight, how are you going to address these issues, I'm going to say, I don't know. That's exactly what we're going to find out, because that's really why we're trying to get this funding. We're hoping to have qualified engineers and professionals come in and help us figure out how to deal with these problems. So tonight, I'm really hoping to just give you notice of this pending application, hopefully answer questions about sort of the general concepts in it, but hopefully gain your support on the application as well, because it is coming quickly on December 7th, just in 2 weeks now. And we're really happy that we've been asked to submit for the full proposal, so we feel good about the application that we're putting forward. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Dave?
I know sometimes the state can be very fussy about their applications.
Yes.
On the first page,
Yep.
it says street address. You have a post office box.
Got
You
it.
may want to add the street address.
Yep.
And I only say this because you and I know that state, FEMA, any of those will kick back these things if the right
Yeah.
information isn't there.
Yep.
So, and that's the only thing I saw in the
Okay.
project that I had a question on, and seeing as how you haven't applied for it quite yet, you may want to add that.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, and we are still, I should have pointed that out. We are still refining this application. We anticipate we will send it in the next week or so, but that's a good point. If you catch anything after this meeting, if you happen to go home and want to read through this again, just let me know, and I'd be happy to make corrections. Appreciate it.
Paul?
So Matt, thank you for doing this. So just help me with something. It's 34 grand is a match amount.
Yeah.
Is that, could we call that the taxpayer contribution to this?
Yep, I think that'd be fair to call it that.
Would it be, do we know what the taxpayer has to foot in addition to 34,000? The reason I ask the question, I'm not familiar with 319
Yeah.
grants, so forgive me if I don't have this right. But my understanding in my world of grants is you're given a grant for a specific set of activities.
Right.
And there are indirect costs that come to deliver on those sets of activities. Human labor, human capital.
Yep.
Which the grant doesn't fund because there's no way to estimate how much someone's salary should be. Is the 34,000 that indirect cost, or do you anticipate it to be something beyond that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the $34,000 will not be that indirect cost. That $34,000, we don't fully know how it will be spent right now. It could pay an engineer, it could pay a contractor to perform work, but what it definitely does not include is my time being involved with the grant or any other staff time involved with the grant. I would say that's the only indirect cost that isn't factored in. But that's why we have this requirement for the additional $39,000. That is where my time can be accounted. So,
okay,
yeah,
thank you.
Hopefully that answers your question.
And at this point, it's probably a best estimate, but
Yeah.
the purpose makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
And I also want to point out that the monitoring is going to be done by the Lake Lay Monitoring Program that is run by the Wentworth Watershed, that they, as a group, will put in a lot of their own time to monitor the changes in this water body.
Yeah, not to get into details too much, but this proposal actually does not include monitoring. I don't believe it includes monitoring. What
The
page?
reason I came up with it, the project outline goals will be measured by the reduction of phosphorus in the lake identified by the lake monitoring.
So, yeah.
Already, it's been in place for,
So I can explain why it may say that in the application, but our proposal does not include that. Because of the locations of these three sites,
Okay.
in conversations with the association and Don Kretschmar as well, he has made it clear that he thinks these sites are virtually impossible to test for
Okay.
because of their frankly, the openness of the water, the sort of the other factors that may play into test results. So we actually had a specific conversation about that.
Okay.
We do not anticipate doing monitoring as part of this project, though that may
For those
change.
specific sites.
That's correct.
The
Yep.
Watershed Association monitors the whole lake.
Correct. Yep.
And so
Yep.
it's not in direct relationship to these
That's right.
particular sites,
Yep.
but the whole lake will be monitored for these
Right.
phosphorus and stuff, and it's done yearly to help with this.
Yep.
Of course,
correct.
I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Matt.
Do you need anything more from us other than
I
that?
have one more.
No, I meant in terms of this
Oh,
one. I know we have one more to do.
As
Is
long
that
as,
o-
as long as the board feels comfortable supporting the application as presented, it won't change substantively in the next 2 weeks, just minor changes. And obviously, I've kind of explained the appropriation part. We'd have to come forward for that cash request at a later time.
So is everybody comfortable? Do I have a consensus? Okay.
Thank
The
you.
next one is a 319 grant in relation to Russ Pond.
Yep.
You want to do that one?
Yes, please. So on some less positive news, we currently have a 319 grant on Rust Pond as well. The focus of that grant being the boat launch site on Rust Pond. I've included in your packets a memo addressing this project, but to summarize my letter and I guess the purpose of my presentation tonight, in my best judgment, we cannot complete the project that was proposed as part of that grant application due to the uncertainty of the property in question and sort of the principal property in the application. You are all aware that we have a legal situation regarding that parcel that, in my opinion, prevents us from reasonably doing the work that was proposed as part of the grant. There are other additional issues beyond that, but I think that's really the principal issue. I think it's important to share that I don't want this to be viewed as a reflection upon the relationship with the Rust Pond Association. I've had excellent conversations with their members. I plan to send them a formal letter should the board feel comfortable with this action of potentially abandoning this grant. We are excited to potentially work with them moving forward and even on the Route 28 improvements that may potentially allow us to do some of the work that was identified in the conceptual plans. The last thing I'd say too is that I have actually already reached out to Jeff Marcoux at NHDES regarding the status of this grant. They've obviously been asking us where it stands for quite some time. In the context of the other 319 grants that we're looking at requesting for the town, they want to ensure that we're a viable party that can complete this work. Jeff is aware of the issues and does not view it as any black mark, if you will, against the town. He recognizes the situation and appears, at least at this time, to be comfortable with a potential request to abandon the grant. And then the last thing I'll say is that I don't want to make it seem like we haven't done any work on this. The town, through cash, actually paid for the conceptual designs that were done. We have real design work that could potentially be implemented on the ground. We simply just don't have the ability to perform it right now. And that's all I...
Does anybody have any comments or questions? I do. I am not happy that we are going to give up this grant. The Rust Pond Association has been trying to deal with the sediment that has been coming into their lake in many places, and this was one that looked like we could help them with. To put this off until 2024, to me, is just a shame when we had applied for a grant. I will support you in the fact that we do have a problem with the land. We have hired a surveyor, and that is a big obstacle here. But I'm disappointed that we can't go through this. I really think that that association, as with any of these associations, do a lot of work in order to get these grants, and for us to not be able to move forward disappoints me. Paul?
Yeah, without getting into the the activities of a surveyor, I presume you've had some thinking time to assess the amount of time it's going to take to get the surveying done, and then all the thrashing of the bits that has to take place in order to come to a resolution. And that window or that chunk of time is outside of when you need to file for the grant, or inside of when you need to file for the grant?
This is a grant that we've had for a period of 4 years.
Outside of that, when I say file for it, we give up, we can't do it, or...
I feel uncomfortable requesting an additional extension through NHDES based on a property that we are uncertain of its legal status. I don't feel comfortable requesting yet another extension on top of what we've already requested.
So our real reason for not being able to go forward or ask for extension is the issue on the property.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Period. But the letter has others.
But the letter does have others, and I think it's.
And to me, I'd get rid of the others. The issue is we cannot move forward. We can't do anything about the land issue. We could end up in court.
And it seems sad, if that's the right way to put it. It seems disappointing that, and I'm not familiar with the sediment issue, but let's assume just for the heck of it that there has been some sediment issues down there, which I presume there are, and we're saying we can't move forward because of a survey issue. That troubles me. I'm not pointing at you. I'm just saying that's troubling. That's why I'm here. That's a troubling set of facts.
Yep, I agree.
If I may elaborate just slightly, if DES was aware of the fact that we didn't have any easements and that question as to ownership of the property, they probably would have denied the grant to begin with. It's a rare exception.
Well, that's looking backwards, but we're in the current state. The question is, how do we get out of the situation so that we can deal with the sediment issue? What's the path we have to cut forward?
Let me say this. The places what I was saying about the Russ Pond Association, they've had huge sediment issues. This spot is not the place that I know of the huge sediment problems, but they have been fighting to address, and they have a watershed plan.
Yeah.
They went to the business of getting all that put together so they can apply for that.
It is disappointing. It's well said, because we have an excellent relationship with them, I think, and it's been uncomfortable addressing this issue with them. But I think we're just recognizing, we're not saying that the work should not be done or that it's not important work. We're saying that this is not the method by which we are going to be able to get it done. That is how I'm looking at it. But, yeah.
And by the way, we may be able to do it 5 years from now. That's the other piece, one in 2024 when we deal with the road issue. You know, it just is a shame. That's my bottom line. It's a shame.
One alternative I would suggest, though, is, obviously, I mentioned the CIP. We have talked about water resource funding there, the potential to create a capital reserve or a warrant article. Many things have gone back and forth. Ultimately, it was decided upon to do that as a warrant article. This town is clearly committed to funding for water quality. The scope of the grant funding for these improvements was relatively minor from a dollar figure perspective. I don't want this to appear to be either we do it now or we do it in 6 years. There may be an opportunity to do this work in a year and a half or 2 years, depending upon the legal situation. We may be able to procure funding to do that, but right now it's not reasonable to do so.
On the highway.
You use the reason I jumped out, you use 2024 as possibly in doing that, and if that,
This is a low.
I would like, if that's not the case, I wouldn't use a date that's that far out. That we are willing to look at other options, and that jumped out at me right away. So Does anybody else have any comments or concerns about this? Anything they want changed in the letter? Dave?
Oh, the only other thing, Matt, is, as you know, where the ramp is, the state owns that property.
The launch itself.
Right.
Yeah.
They have a deed to that. And the catch basin that's right here by Abenaki Estates goes directly into the lake.
Yeah, that's probably a state catch basin
It's a state
as well.
catch
state
basin.
drainage.
It's between the road and the sidewalk.
Yep.
So I think that's what they're talking about as far as that particular area. I think the worst area is up behind the farm that comes from all the way from the high school.
Oh, I
The
agree,
orchards
too.
area?
Oh, yeah.
That's the worst.
Yes.
Yeah, and we're looking at that area
Yeah.
actively.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
It drains, and it drains right from the high school, because my daughter owns some land back there, and it goes right down, and once they did the high school, the volume that they've now dumping
Yeah, I can
and the
imagine.
back,
Yeah.
there's a lot there that we can't even build on anymore.
Right.
You're right, Dave.
yeah, and that soils from the high school down to Russ Pond, I took a soils class with Sid Pilgrim from UNH. Said there was the worst soil conditions he ever saw in all the years he'd been teaching. So they have some issues there that go across under Crossroad
Okay.
and go
Yep.
down to
Yeah.
Russ Pond. That whole area through there is
Okay.
nothing but peat, more or less.
Yep.
There's very little soils in there.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they have a bigger issue in that section than we do right here, but as you know, that's just a low spot for all of 28
Right.
in that area.
Right. Yep, that's right.
I hate to see that given up, too. I agree with that.
I agree.
Well, on that sad note, is there,
Yeah,
anything,
yeah.
is there anything else? That
No,
you
there's
have?
nothing else. Yeah, I'm sorry to share that news with you, but I think that's the best course of action on this. Okay?
Any other comments? No. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Have a safe drive home.
Drive carefully, buddy.
Okay, we're going to go back to the beginning of the agenda. And does anybody have any questions and concerns on the monthly budget expenditure report?
Yeah.
I just again would like to point out that we're higher than we were last year. I did do that comparison. And to the town manager, I know you had a substitute secretary, but it would be nice if it'd be double-sided. It's just a lot of paper we don't need to.
I have a couple of comments.
Sure, Dave.
On page 2, under particularly highways and streets, vehicle maintenance, 430, is overexpended by 5.3%. And I may attribute that to some issues with the best word, help. And then building maintenance, 435, is overexpended by 53, almost 54%. And then the other one I picked up was machinery and equipment, 740, is overexpended by 77%. I find those numbers to be quite high.
Eye-popping.
I think also in the same budget, it's at 83.297, and we've just had some big storms that had them out in November, and this is one of the budgets. I think, I think it might make sense to see if we can get a report on how some of these-
I would like some kind of an explanation on those as to where the building maintenance and particularly machinery and equipment is overexpended.
You'd like a detailed
Like a breakdown of that?
line item report, we can do that.
And I also would like to have Dave Ford explain to us where he's going to make the adjustments in his budget to cover his plowing. I think overtime should be very high. Materials. Overtime is at 95.691.
His burn rate is
I
up.
mean, there's, communications, 70%.
So I think we need we want to
we need some
report.
explanation.
Yeah. All right?
On highways.
On highways.
Highways and streets in particular.
He was saying you need, just pick out highways and streets and drill into that whole department. I have one, if I could.
Sure, yep.
And it may be a hard one to do. So we're 10/12ths of the way into budget season, or into actual. Actually, we're 10 and a half in. So when do you calculate, or when do you have an idea as to what the unrestricted fund balance will be? When do you? Because that's kind of your proxy of we're okay, we're not okay, right?
We can do a cursory end of the year evaluation but there are a number of adjustments that the auditors do, which is, for example, they split the payroll per diem for the last week. And that's one of the largest adjustments that gets made via the audit. So we really don't know what the undesignated fund balance is until after the audit. We can make a good projection.
Well, maybe don't burn the lamp oil.
But the thing is it's not what our unassigned fund balance is. That is, are we going to stay within the approved expenditures
Yes,
at this particular point?
I'd rather than do the unrestricted fund balance, back up one and say, you know, we're kind of on final approach, or we're looking at the runway. Are we going to undershoot it, or are we going to overshoot it? More importantly, we're going to overshoot the runway.
And to me,
that would be, I mean, is there some way that we can start pegging whether we're there now or not, overshooting?
Department heads have been directed to nearly stop spending. In fact, they have only 4 more days until December 1st to issue any new purchase orders.
Yeah, so they're encumbering everything that they need to encumber within the next couple of days.
Even an encumbrance doesn't have to take place. You know, got to have a fine set of conditions.
And even if you encumber it, it doesn't mean it's spent.
are you at this point being very careful and holding back until we find where we are on those expenditures? And that's what I would be expecting you to do.
I don't want you to do staff work that isn't necessary. I'm just trying to figure out, are we going to land the plane on the runway, off the runway, or short of the runway? And if right now you think it's problematic.
Even though half the budget was not my responsibility,
Yeah.
I came in on June 1st.
Yeah.
We're going to hit the runway.
Good, okay. And if that changes, pull the klaxon horn, blow the whistle.
I know how to say no.
I have all the confidence in you that you will do that. Okay. We have Christine here. Let's get Christine up and take a look at the community center conditions. Isn't that? Or are you going to bring it first?
Well, a couple of things. One, under town manager's report, I would say, because we want to get you on the road too. I would say that I've been very dismayed at the fact that we have this beautiful brand new Foss Field pavilion that has been repeatedly vandalized. And that is one sad situation. In ways that are not always human. I mean, people have done things like attempted to rip the sink off the wall, etc. And we are going to recommend that the bathrooms be on lockdown over the winter unless they needed to be open for a special occasion. Perhaps people don't realize that they're under surveillance down there. We have security cameras. There is a sign that says this place is being monitored, and we have, I understand, the chief may speak to this later, we have identified some individuals who are responsible for that behavior, and we intend to fully prosecute.
Chief.
Hi.
Hi, Chief.
I hear my name being called, so I'm Chief Rondo. So the town manager's correct, and the pavilion, unfortunately, has been vandalized. Vandalism is being caused by a group of juveniles. And she's absolutely right about what she said. In fact, we had one group that decided to drive a studded, tracked snowmobile through the pavilion area and damaged some of that. Detective Sergeant Maloney is on it. He's working very closely with Pete Llewellyn, school officials. We do have video. We're pretty sure we know who the culprits are. And they'll be held accountable. I recommend that you close the bathrooms for the winter, just to avoid any more vandalism. Once we start holding people accountable and they start paying the full restitution for the damages, then I think it'll stop. Subject to your questions. Yes, sir.
Do the parents pay for juveniles?
Yes, the parents will be held accountable. That's the way it works in the state of New Hampshire. If a juvenile is convicted of a delinquency petition, right, a true bill, in this case, is found true, right, because it's not guilt or innocence with juveniles. It's true or not true. Then what happens is the parents are made to pay whatever the damages are, the restitution, for example, whatever it may be.
I agree. I think, I forget what meeting I was at. I was at so many meetings that we talked about it, and there really isn't the use down there unless there's some kind of event in the winter. And so I easily can support closing them until such time as the weather gets better or there is a specific event that would mean that we should open them down there.
And it is under patrol. My officers are patrolling it frequently.
Good.
Thank you.
Christine?
I would just say, by closing the bathrooms, there's two options. We could just lock the doors, and then if there's a special event over the winter, then we could monitor them and open them, or we could winterize them completely. So it just is, if we think we're not going to open them at all, we might not want to waste the heat and do all that and drain the water and be done with it, or we could still keep them in case we want to open up for, I don't know, New Year's Eve or something.
My understanding is they were all to be done so that it'd be easy to drain them. My feeling is there are 3 of them.
Yeah.
You definitely drain them, and if at any point we wanted to we might put 1 back on.
Okay.
I don't see 3 of them being.
Right now, we actually did go down to 1 bathroom, and it's still a problem. We've had to, put our thinking caps on. We have to lock the heat because they were turning the heat up and hanging out in there, and they're using it as more than a 1-person bathroom, which that's not what it's for. We just have to do a lot of thinking how we can make it so it's more inviting to families, less vandalism, and maybe we have more of a presence down there. So.
I'm fine with shutting it for the winter,
Okay.
but if there was a time, my understanding, it would not be hard to put it back
Let
on.
me double check with my staff on that, but yes.
Other board members?
I'd be comfortable with whatever you decide to do.
Yeah.
I think
At this point, we have a lot of replacements. The police have been great. The cameras, thank God we put them in. It's just a little surprising that even though there's signs that say there's cameras and people are right underneath them, it's still happening. So our next course of action might be reaching out to the school just to have conversations with kids to let them know that this is theirs. We made this for them so they can appreciate it and enjoy it and just try to take care of it. So.
This is one of the areas over the years we've had problems with.
Right.
And had vandalism from time to time.
Yeah.
Different groups as they grow up.
Right.
Dave?
Yeah, I would assume even if you shut the bathrooms down that the cameras would stay on.
Yep, cameras are still on. Even with the bathrooms down, I mean, they're trying to pull the handles off the doors. We have to replace all the handles. They kicked in all the drainage pipes. Now the snowmobile went across. They gouged all the pavement and the basketball court pavement. So I have to get prices on all that. Just a lot of, stuff adding up.
Very bad behavior.
Yes.
You think?
Need to find those people. I might have said boys, but I thought that maybe I better not do that. People was better, at least with the group I'm sitting with. Okay, so do you have your answer on that? Everybody comfortable?
Thank you.
Okay, and
I'll take the lead on the
Okay.
community center. Sometime over the summer, I was asked to take a look at that building, and we know that we have some issues with air quality and mold. And there was a remediation done, a mold remediation done some time ago, but it only minimally corrected the problem for a short period of time. The issue is that there is a large shaft in that building that runs from an earthen basement all the way up to the ceiling and maybe even goes through the roof. There are louvers on the side of that, and it's a factory. It's a factory for mold. And so we have to figure out what to do.
That was the whole stuff.
Some people wanted to throw the baby out with the bathwater and rip the building down and start over. I'm not sure that's the necessary approach. We did find a contractor who specializes in abating situations that create mold. His job, he goes in with a heat sensor, was very enlightening, and he zaps all of the areas inside to see where the moisture is, where the wet spots are, and where air is coming in and heat is being lost, and where the perfect climate is for mold. He took a look at the building. He spent most of one day there, and he's provided a quotation a proposal to the board over what he would recommend having done down there. And so I guess I would just open it up for questions, and the reason I wanted Christine here was in case you had questions that I couldn't answer.
Dave?
Well, I read through this, and certainly the blower door test tells most of the story on the building. Got a lot of air leaks in it. But we're looking at about $30,000 or so. You know, $29,933. And what do we have then? We still have an old building. We still have a foundation that's caving in according to his report. I'd like to just table this for now. I think we need to, maybe some of us physically go down and look at it to get a better idea as to what this report says. I would like to anyway. But I don't know, if $30,000 would be better spent to do something else. Probably going to cost us that much even just to tear it down.
And I guess I come at it at another angle. I agree with you. I think we should go down. I think we need to see what it is. But this is the community center. We have no other community center. If we just heard the CIP, we're looking at 2028 in the time of where our other projects are. We need to get the library done, then we need the public safety, and this project's going to be out after that. We have a quilter group who paid the town, I believe it was around $2,000 a couple years ago in order to get the some more electrical units in the building so they could do their quilting. I believe we still bring the day camp up there in bad weather, so I think the town has a use for it in its programs, and I think it's worth putting some money into it. I didn't know whether we can phase it or whether we could do. To me, it seems like the moisture in the basement is the big, and if we could cut off this one shaft, can we, I guess I'm going to use the word limp through until we get to 2028. Dave?
Well, if you're looking at 2028, I don't think this building's going to stand up that long, if what he says in here is true. This does not include any sheetrocking after we tear everything out. Doesn't include fixing the foundation. We're going to get up to $50,000 or $60,000 here pretty fast. And I don't know if that building's worth putting that into. And I would like to table it for now until I get a chance to look at it, and maybe some of the rest of you would. We should make an appointment and get down there and look at it. Because this report is somewhat detailed, but it also, there is some things missing in this report that aren't going to be fixed. So if this is at 30,000, I can see, again, I don't know the foundation situation, whether it's block or concrete, old concrete that's split, sheet rocking that whole inside, new trim, painting it all out. That isn't included in here. And he specifies that right in here, that is not included. You get urea formaldehyde foam, which is at this point all off gas, so it's not an issue to get rid of anymore. So, there are some things in here that are good, that should be done. Maybe it'll save it for a while, but I just soon table it till I have a better chance, and I think the rest of you should get down and look as well.
Anybody else have a comment? Brad?
Yeah, I think I agree to a point with Dave. I think we definitely all need to, or not all, but I think we definitely need to go down and take a look at the building. Concerns I have in here too are, a lot of this work definitely needs to be done in there. My concern is that it doesn't address some of the issues we're having in there also, because we still have a mold problem. We haven't even talked about the lead paint in here and stuff. I'd be concerned about putting some of this money into this and then having some of this be damaged by future, mold growth in there. I'd rather see us do a more complete inspection and know exactly what we have in there and address that at the same time, whether it might cost more to do it at the same time, but then knowing that the work we're doing will last longer. I hate to see us spend $30,000 and have, half it, a quarter, whatever percentage would be, not effective because it gets damaged by future mold or something like that. I'd rather see us, if we had to go another $10,000 to remediate all the mold too at the same time and be guaranteed that it's not going to come back in, that'd be money well spent. So that's kind of my thought on it.
Paul?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same space, but I come at it maybe a little differently. I think you sent us a note that, or maybe Christine, you sent it to Becky and you forwarded over as to what the use of the building is.
Yes, there was one that came to us. Yep.
Did we see something like that? And I forget the details, but it struck me that the usage of the building is minimal. And so, head nod, yeah, minimal.
Yes.
Okay, minimal.
I mean, it would impact us just because we are utilizing it for day camp, but with the new pavilion, we also, we utilize, we didn't have the pavilion before, so anytime there was a rain day, we do half the group at the community center and half the group at the school. This year, with the use of the pavilion, unless it was really inclement weather, we really didn't have to utilize the community center that much. I mean, they would still go up there for relief, for air conditioning and stuff. So it would have an impact to us, but I think it is a great idea for all of you to go down and just see what you're looking at. Because even reading that report, then he had pointed out to me like the roof needed to be done. And then he was saying that that water heater wasn't going to last. And so I was like, my gosh, if we spend this much money and then things are going, I don't have a capital reserve for that building. So we really have to look at it to see what is the future of that community center.
So just to continue on the thought, what I read, and again, I read and I came away and said minimal use. And I think it was quilters, children, and a karate class. Was it a karate class?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Minimal use, all right. And then I read the document as my colleagues said, and I kind of did scratch my head and I said, this proposal really doesn't deal with a lot of things that could pop up: lead paint, building structure, foundation issues. The list, I'm sure, could go on and on and on.
Right.
And that 30,000 could become 60,000, could become 50. It could become a bigger number. Question. And by the way, the M word now has been used. There's mold in the building. Okay. So question. Could we find a place? If somebody were to say, here's $25,000, $40,000, $50,000, here's $50,000, find a way to help those people use different facilities in our town, could we sort that out? And I'll bet you the answer could be, you bet, we could figure that out. Meanwhile, and I will agree that we should probably table this, meanwhile, we have to decide whether this building is fixed, raised, or incorporated into something else. But I mean, the fix, the incorporation really is going to generate a price tag that we have to just totally understand, because it could be a lot bigger than just mold mitigation. I mean, it could be a whole. And I don't do contracting work, but it sounds to me like it could get really hairy. So, can we find a place for the karate class? Can we find a place for the quilters? Can we find a place for the children? And then, and then deal with this other issue. And I'd like to believe that we can. Now, Ms. Murray very capably is saying, yeah, but what about the fact that we're not going to do anything until 2028? There's going to be other needs placed upon the town by folks who want a community kind of gathering place. I don't have a good answer for that. I don't know what to do about that.
I'm more than willing to go down. I would like to go down as a board. Yeah. We can post it and go down and take a look at it and get a good understanding of what is there. I'm not wed to that building. I don't think that building is something that eventually isn't going to come down in another project. I just don't want to, if we could repair it to get to a new one, that would be my first choice. If it's not economically feasible or makes sense, then that's where we are, is kind of where I am. So I will make a motion
Table it?
Yep.
I'll second that.
All righty. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And at our next meeting, bring your calendars. We'll get a date to go down there and look at it. Okay?
And I'll send you a schedule just so you know if there's anything going on. But
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Do you have
I'd
like a
to be
diary?
there because there's actually, I need to get you a key down below too, so
Yeah.
I'll make sure I'm there when
Do you have like a a diary of the schedule
Yeah,
that
it's actually
says who's in
posted on
there
our
and when?
website. It's posted on our website.
It is?
We
Okay, I'll
have
go
Pop
look.
Whalen Community Center in Abenaki. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. You don't have anything else, right? You can go home? Okay.
Drive carefully.
If I'm coming down here, the next thing is the town report, front and back cover and the bid. And I'm assuming did you put these here, Becky?
Yes.
Okay. These are two, and I'll pass them down. I had two of ours that I forgot to bring. But what I have done is I had my brother-in-law take some pictures of the Foss Field building, and I'll send it down. These are just three of them, and I was wondering whether on the back we look at putting a picture of the Foss Field building. And then what I was trying to find was, and I wrote Cindy today, whether we had something on the groundbreaking for the new library, which seems to be our two big projects that seem to be happening. And those are my two suggestions. I don't know if anybody else had given any suggestion.
Yeah, I like those suggestions. I'd really thought about it yet, to tell you the truth, but I like that idea.
That's pretty cool.
That's beautiful.
I like, is this picture one of the ones you actually picked out to?
Yeah, he gave me a
Appropriate one?
whole bunch of them, and those were the three.
I like that one, yeah. I think
And that was,
that's-
he loves his drone. But it gives you a picture of the building and of the complex down there, and we will be asking for some monies for the basketball courts in our capital outlay.
And I'm ambivalent, having not thought about it. I think there's two things to think about. One is what we're working on, which is what your council is. You know, you kind of show the shovel going in the ground. And then the other, which I find, this strikes me, this one here, is where we live.
We did that last year.
I know, but I mean, there's probably a million photographs of where we live. So at the moment, I'm kind of ambivalent, but I kind of like I lean towards the where we live because it warms people.
Last year, we did the town docks on the front, and on the back was a picture of the village in snow.
Yeah.
I just didn't bring those with me. But we could look at putting something that wraps around. I don't think I remember to put.
That's nice.
You want these? Would you like this? Take that. You can take them home.
So those are just some suggestions. If anybody else, we've got a little bit of time, get some pictures, yeah?
I wonder if we have any pictures of something like a concert in Kate Park,
Yes.
or happy shoppers in Main Street during the summer, showing people in action. I think that would be nice.
Anybody who can find those pictures, bring them in. That's all, I did is to just, try to see what kind of pictures we have here. So we'll take a look at that. Becky, you also had with this a question about the bid.
Well, basically which vendor you would like to go with. We put a very extensive advertisement out there with the specifications that we've used in the past. We've realized that we could probably encourage more bidders if we promised that the product we would deliver is a print-ready PDF as opposed to all of the specs that we had.
We could do that, right?
So some things that we'd also like you to consider is whether or not you've ever looked at doing a regular 8.5 by 11 full-size town report versus the smaller.
No.
You mean like an annual, like a business annual?
Moltenboro may have it. One of the towns have one that's in that bigger size.
We're finding that year after year, it's a little harder to read the debt schedule in particular. So right now, we just have to figure out whether you want to go with Country Press, Inc. of Lakeville, Mass., who submitted a bid of $2,707.81, which is a $54.51 increase from their bid last year, or whether you want to try someone new and go with R.C. Brayshaw of West Lebanon. I do have experience using them in the past in another community. It's substantially higher, $3,403. And then if you want them to do the final editing, it's another $2,000 for editing and layout.
Where are we on the budget?
And I'm going to guess that you didn't.
It probably came out of our miscellaneous or came out of printing for the Board of Selectmen or out of the town managers. My only concern is we went 1 year, and I think it was 2014, with a bidder who was the lowest bidder, and boy, we paid for it. That's my only. And if we've used this Country Press last year, we can use it this year, and then let's try to go to a PDF and make the changes and take a look at different formats. I'm comfortable. How does anybody else feel about that?
Oh, I agree. I think we ought to stick with Country Press for this year and then look at it next year, PDF format.
And then maybe we can not have to go out on such an expensive spec,
Right.
et cetera.
I'll make that a motion if you want.
Yeah, thanks. Do I have a second? Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, let's hear that.
Yeah.
Why don't we got to come back to the warrant articles. Let me get the police chief out of here, and he wants to speak to us on the police special detail revolving fund retirement.
I think we did that.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. I'm Chief Rondo, Wolfeboro PD. During our drilling down of several questions and issues surrounding the police special detail revolving account, we were notified by either the town manager or the town finance officer, I'm not sure which, that certain officers are exempt from paying the retirement portion of that detail, and that is indeed true. If you were hired as a police officer after July 1st of 2011, police special details are not included as part of your retirement. So for somebody like me who was hired in 1996, when I do a detail, or Captain Libby does a detail, or Sergeant Maloney does a detail, or whomever, because we were hired before 2011, we pay approximately 29% of that detail money to retirement, okay? We were looking at why the account was earning so much money, and then then this other piece came up. Oh yeah, that's right, I forgot about that. The legislature changed the law. We confirmed the law, and then we went about and made sure that the officers who should be exempt were indeed exempt and weren't paying. So that was the first step. And then the second step was to make sure all the officers who should have been paying were paying, and we found two that were not. One was Eric LaRochelle.
Chief, don't have to mention who.
Oh, don't mention any
Thank
names?
you.
Okay.
We found two who were
Okay.
not.
All right, fair enough. So two officers that, and both of them had been hired from Wakefield. And in one officer's case, he had started in Group 2 through correction. So even though he didn't become a police officer until much later, the fact that he started in Group 2, which is what the police are in, it counted. He had uninterrupted service initially as a corrections officer. So there's a relatively minor amount of money that is going to have to be paid to New Hampshire Retirement. The rough number for each officer amounts to approximately $2,473.89 total. The officer will have to pay back whatever his portion was, which is roughly 11%, so somewhere around $500 each, and that will have to be paid into New Hampshire retirement. We cannot pay it for the officer. It has to come from the officer, so it can't come from the police department. This goes back almost 2 years. This little era has been going on for about 2 years. We don't put in this information. The police department doesn't put in this information. We don't bill New Hampshire retirement. I make sure the money is there with the police special detail revolving account. With how we bill, we take into consideration. And all of that is correct. So we make sure we don't have a deficit. But the actual payment out is done by the town finance department. There will probably be some interest associated with these payments. I don't know what that's going to be. I don't know how they calculate that. We'll have to wait for some sort of reckoning from New Hampshire retirement once they've been notified. I don't know if they've been notified. I haven't notified them, but I did notify the town manager and town finance officer. I was asked to come and describe it to you, and I was asked to work up some numbers that are fairly accurate, should get us in the center field. So subject to that, what are your questions at this time?
I just need clarity, Chief. What's the number that we prospectively could be underpaid on? What's the number? 2,100 divided by 2, 2,100 in total?
So together, yes, together it comes out to $2,473.89. And in answer to your earlier question, I'm definitely going to land the airplane on the runway.
Thank you, Chief.
And we have the runway in sight, and we're definitely not going to overshoot the runway. So that's the good news. I have the money in the budget to pay this. You know, again, I don't know what the interest is going to be. I don't know how they're going to calculate that. I mean, if I knew their formula, I could easily do it. I just don't know how they do it. Or what number they're going to use, and there may be some fines that the town gets hit with. I don't know. Quite frankly, I've never been in a situation like this before.
Right. So it's roughly $1,200 for 2 accounting periods.
That's correct.
Plus any whatever is on top of it, interest and other.
The whole thing. Okay. The whole thing should come to less. The whole thing should come to less than $6,000. And I'm fairly certain I'm going to have more than $6,000 left in my budget at the end of the year. My recommendation is that this come from the police budget at the end of the year. We'll definitely have money in the unexpended appropriation that we can pay this out, and that's what we should do. Just so we're going into 2019 fresh. I do want to say that once I did bring it to the town manager's attention and the town finance officer's attention, they did fix the problem moving forward. We're just now dealing with the aftermath of what essentially began in 2016. And again, we tripped across it by happenstance as we were drilling down on the police special detail. That's been getting a lot of attention, and that's how we found some of these errors. Ladies and gentlemen, subject to your questions right now, that's all I have.
Paul?
Not a question for the chief.
Yes, sir.
Not for the chief. I have a question. Does the auditor, assuming these have to be done as prior period adjustments, which in fact they are prior period adjustments, are we going to have to reopen the town financials for period whatever 15 or 16?
I think that that's a possibility.
What does the auditor think?
I haven't contacted the auditor, our municipal auditor yet. I was more concerned with contacting the NHRS, New Hampshire Retirement System, auditors or inspectors. because recently, between 2014 and 2017, instead of it just being a payback and an interest situation, there's a penalty. And if you report quickly and promptly, they sometimes will greatly reduce or waive the penalty. If you hold back, not so much.
Are there other people, other employees outside of PD that are eligible for this New Hampshire retirement system contribution?
Oh, yes.
Have we gone in and looked at those people to make sure that?
We have not looked at all of them. We don't have the resources to do an audit before the audit.
Okay, let me just kind of pass this out.
As you're doing that, it would seem, I don't know, I mean, it would seem to me that we need to know from our auditor how this one, you know, it's not a who shot Cock Robin, but it's how did this one get, you know, get under the radar, and if it's a procedural error or just a calculation error, you know, wouldn't we want to ask our current auditor to come back to us and just affirm that that there either is or there isn't an issue in other parts of the organization. If there is, we have to then we have something to talk about.
Well, I did this, I just passed out this sheet of paper, and when this came up, I looked at the 2016-2017 monthly report as of December 31st, and I found that in 2017, the retirement line had $21,823.96 left overpaid to the state retirement. I've done that again with the 2018 to date. We should have sent in 203,000 plus, and we've sent in 227 plus. So there's $44,000 that is been overpaid. And what I did is I took the percentage that should go in and I multiplied it times the salary. And I do understand, Becky, that your staff has a lot to do, but I could go through down in the 2018 budget and do the same kind of calculation if I had the amount, and we could try to figure out whether we have money being paid out of the police department budget for New Hampshire retirement that should be in another department, or whether we've got something else going on here to try to get a handle. And I sent this to you in one of those emails. You may not have had time to get to it today. I was hoping that you would. So I'm back to where Paul is. I would really like to sit down with the auditor, because these are unaudited figures that I'm dealing with. There are all sorts of changes, and get a better understanding on how the money goes through the different accounts, because there are accounts that we don't see. And when Deb sent an email to the auditor, and I want to say she has been very helpful.
Yes, she has.
In trying to get this out. In his letter, he said the town can choose to pay the benefits out of whatever budget line they have established, but it does not make sense to utilize the police detail fund for all the associated tax and benefits related to payroll. I'd like to have some questions. I have some questions for him and exactly what he's asking us to do, because obviously what we're doing isn't working. So I would like us to get some questions, sit down with him.
I think we're both hunting in the same direction, which is, you know, we'll use the F word. It's fix. Fix this. I just worry. You know, I read your note, Becky, today. I just worry that asking the state of New Hampshire to come in, which, you know, ultimately we have to communicate with them when we should. That makes good sense. It's proper. It's all of that. But asking them to come in without having had the time to sit with the person who actually did the audit, I think what they would then say is, well, I got to talk to your auditor. So I'd much rather have the first conversation with our auditor and say, we're confused. We're plus over here, we're not plus over here. Could you take us through, on a walk through the books as to how you did this? Because if I believe, and I'm not suggesting I wouldn't believe, but if I understand Selectman Murray's piece of paper, it says we're 44.5 to the good.
Yeah, that's where I started to go.
And this character over here is saying he's 2,600 to 2473.98 to the bad. And so there's swinging going on here, and I'd just like to understand why and how. And then if we have to go confess our sins, I'm all for that.
Well, it's not optional, I have to say. So let's back up. I agree with you. Yes, we should have our auditing firm, Tim Green, come in and explain what he did and why and how and what he audits and what he only samples and what he totally drills down on. That's an excellent idea. However, RSA 100-A, colon number 5 says, town has an obligation to accurately and timely report.
Sure.
And so they've been advised that we found an error. It was somebody had not changed the payroll setting so that from 26% to 29 point whatever
Whatever the number
it
is.
is.
2943.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Roughly
And
speaking.
that happened how long ago?
Yes, yeah, to my knowledge.
Many years ago.
2011.
Yes.
And so
2011.
we have to timely and accurately report that we found a discrepancy, which I have done, and they are scheduling us. The last time they had an impromptu audit was in 2014. I spoke with an inspector today, and they're going to send me the results of that 2014 impromptu audit.
And you don't know at that point whether we had to pay anything or whether...
There were conclusions, there were citations found. I don't know if they are the same citations as now. I would be rather dismayed if they were.
Well, that's good news, actually. If in 2014, you know, the state said, you know, here's a few items that you need to pay attention to, we can go back to our existing, you know, auditor and say, did those get fixed, yay or nay? And so then we have a period to begin from,
Yes,
as
yes.
opposed to having to go all the way back to, you know, when Adam was an ant. Because it sounds to me that we're going to have to do prior period adjustments somehow.
Most likely.
And that means we have to bring the auditor in to do that. We can't do that, and the state can't do it. We can do it. We have to do it with our
They could
auditor.
simultaneously be in the same building at the same time, which would be very efficient for us.
I just want to add for the selectmen, pardon me, that I did canvass the police department, and we did drill down on all the officers, and we checked on all the officers to make sure that everybody was paying what they should be paying, number one, relative to police details, and two, those officers that were exempt were truly exempt. And these were the only two officers that we found that weren't paying in. So I'm confident that relative to police special details and this little issue, that we have no one else out there that has this issue. Now, I think it's right and proper to do a scrub, however that looks, whatever that looks like. Because if this problem has occurred, there are probably others, and that's just my thought.
And that's why I'm just flabbergasted we're overpaying based on the salary and the percentage of 2.439. And so that's what makes me saying if I knew what was the percentage for those other departments in the salary, I can do a spreadsheet and go through and take a look to see if we've got a department over there that should be, there's a $30,000 or $25,000 shortage, then we know something is going in here before we get everybody
Just
in
remember,
here.
the police retirement is higher than everybody,
That's
than
right.
Group 1,
Yeah.
right? So, and I
That's
think
why-
firefighters are in that group too, aren't they? They're in Group 2?
That's why I didn't do the other calculations, because I didn't have that precision. I only had the police department percentage.
Right, so there's the police and fire and corrections officers, and then there's everybody else. And theirs is less. I just don't know what it is.
11.38.
What is it?
11.38
Yeah, okay, yeah, so significantly less.
employer and 7%, I believe, employee.
Okay.
Because if you get that,
Brad's nodding.
if you get me that and email it to me, I will kind of go through and see if we can pinpoint, because what I'm seeing, we've overpaid in 2018, and my guess is there's something else going on. But I liked what I saw. It looked like we had overpaid better than
overpaying
these
is
figures
good.
being in the negative
Overpaying is definitely good.
is better.
Yeah, but, that's a yeah, but.
Right.
There is a,
But there's a problem, right? Why did we overpay?
Calculation.
You're right, you're right.
There's a calculation we need to.
But if you're going to have a problem,
That one's a better one to have.
if you're going to have a problem, sir, that's the problem to have.
Town manager, would we get fined if we overpaid?
Well, I think when I was hired, I mentioned I like to balance to the penny.
Yeah, but would we?
Either way.
Yeah, good. Okay, well, so I think that if you're going to receive a copy of that episodic document from the state, that will, hopefully establish a baseline. And then we can sit with our current auditor and just say, did you implement? Yep. And then what has transpired since then? Because we appear to be 2398.74, whatever the number is, not
2943.
close enough for government work to the, and yet we're 44 grand over here. And I assume we're going to have to do prior period adjustments, both debits as well as credits, which means we're going to have to reopen the books. Oh, it's not material, but it's enough to have to reopen these things. Yeah. Thank you.
So what we really need to do is make sure we get a set of questions to ask the auditor. I think once we get that and take a look at where our problems were last time, I have the letter that Deb was asking, and he was saying he thought we could do it in a different manner. We need to kind of sit down and see if we can't get a process and straighten it out and move on in 2019 in a positive and correct way.
And the best word I heard through this whole conversation was fix. We want to fix.
Yeah,
Finance wants to fix.
That's
Town manager wants to fix.
That's the whole idea.
Board of Selectmen
Want to fix.
Then we can go find something else that's broken and fix that too. It's like fix this and then go find something else to fix. It's kind of the.
Soon enough, we'll have it
why
all
we're here.
And
fixed.
so how do you want to approach this, Madam Chairman?
I first would like to get the information from the state on the prior audit, and I would then like to have the Board of Selectmen sit down and look at dates and some questions, and I think the town manager and the finance director and each one of us can look at it. I'd like to think some more about that letter and ask the auditor I'd like to have him explain how they have accounted for the money going from one count to another and how he okayed, because our audit reports right here are absolutely clean, how he justified that our New Hampshire retirement payments were accurate. So on the 5th, we'll look at looking at a date. We'll bring those calendars.
Yep.
All right. Anything else on this? Now that I've shuffled my. Okay.
Thanks for landing.
Dean, thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you, ma'am.
American Tower purchase of the water tank. Is there any member of the board who would like to move forward with that?
I'll comment on it.
Hey, Dave.
First of all, I don't think that we can give anything in perpetuity. Second, the principals that are now running at AT&T, Verizon, and AMT, these companies continually change, technology changes, and I don't. What happens if somebody puts up another tower a mile away? I have no idea. But in reading the whole thing, it didn't seem to me that that there was enough information here for me to vote yes on it, and I probably wouldn't vote yes on anything to give anybody a right in perpetuity to a town asset.
Any other,
What is Becky, what do you think about it?
I think we receive around $88,000 in annual income, and through this process, and maybe what triggered this sheet of paper is that I asked for an accounting of what the revenue is, because our revenue stream is based off a percentage of their revenue stream, and then this page came in, and so I think I'm inclined to say if you want to do an actuarial study on what in perpetuity means, great, but I'm comfortable with status quo.
that's where I am.
Absolutely.
Too.
So moved.
Okay, so we're going to do nothing. Table it, right?
Yep.
Okay, one quick one, and then we'll go back to the warrant. I got a email from the chairman of the Conservation Commission who would like to be added to the Cyanobacteria Committee, either him or a member of his committee. I'm about ready to set the date for that committee, but I didn't want to add somebody from the Conservation Commission without approval of the board. So can I have approval to add either the chairman or another member of the Conservation Commission to the Cyanobacteria Ad Hoc Committee?
Sounds good to me.
Second that.
Any further discussion?
Third that.
Third that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that takes care of that page. Let's go back, and Becky has given us a draft of the warrant article, the town warrant and the warrant articles, and I did send to Becky a list of some of the changes that I saw when I went to proof it, but let's just kind of go through it, and I'll speak up when I get to those spots and see how we go.
Madam Chair, could I just?
Yes,
say
sure,
that
absolutely.
I have also sent this to all of the department heads for their review. I have a set of comments back from Dave Ford, Director of Public Works, so I may have to interject here and there as well.
Perfect.
So on page one, no ordinance change, no zoning changes contemplated?
They are coming. I hear there could be 6 to 8 articles.
Really?
About 7 of them, 7 or 8, yeah. Most of them are housekeeping, nothing, no big broad changes, or just some language here and
Language to
there.
make the zones consistent?
Anybody?
Okay, all right, thank you.
Not yet.
Okay.
I also hear we may receive one public petition that is regarding impact fees, possibly doing away with them.
Good, I'm in favor of
I
that.
mean, like for new construction, sewers and things.
Well, I think the only thing we have an impact fee is for the schools. The other ones are connection fees.
That's right.
Right.
So we have two different things there.
Collect their own.
Do we want to go through just the money articles, or do we want to go through?
Just money.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Does it, I'm keen to do this, but does it make sense for us to get them in as close to final form as humanly possible before we go through them?
Well, if there's one here, whether we're exactly right, that somebody just in no way wants to put forward, we can get.
Oh, is that the procedure? I'm sorry.
I'm just looking at them.
I didn't know what the-
Or we want to change, right now, we're thinking of changing any amount.
Pardon my
No, we're
naivete.
just trying to, is everybody in agreement? We will look now just at the money warrant articles,
Yeah.
and starting with the capital reserve for the dispatch equipment. Does that make sense on page 3?
Can I do one more?
Sure.
And in terms of the language, because I've buffed up on my budgeting book about warrant articles, we're not here to do language. We're going to let Becky and the lawyers worry about making sure the language is right.
What usually came in is it would be in the language that would be put on the warrant, some of these are not in there, they're more of an explanation.
Right.
And then the board would go through and decide if they wanted to bold anything. And then the warrant articles used to be put through town attorney, and then any that are went through bond counsel in the state.
So you'll handle that stuff?
In the Department of Revenue, yes.
Yeah, okay, so we don't have to worry about whether the wording is right. We
That's
just have
what
to
I
worry-
did.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay.
Becky, what we did before is give letters to these like A, B, C, D, but so we could refer to them, and then we didn't give them numbers till later.
Oh, thank you, that's a good idea.
Funds received.
Okay. First one is the dispatch equipment capital reserve fund for the police department. I think that is a good capital reserve account, makes sense.
Recommended by CIP, right? We saw that today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good.
So is the board okay with leaving that one on the list?
Yep.
The operating budget, we don't have any amounts yet, so that will have to come back to the town road upgrades. That should be 800,000, which is what is being recommended by the CIP. Was that something you were going to change also, Becky?
Yes, that's what the Director of Public Works also said, so my confusion there.
Okay, so we're agreed that will be changed.
Yep.
The insurance, the wastewater treatment plant insurance proceeds,
I have an exact number,
okay?
49,650. I'm going to round up 17 cents and say 55. So 49,655.
It's a big rounding up from 17 cents.
And my understanding is we have a capital reserve account set up, am I correct, for that?
Insurance.
Why would we not just increase our payment to the wastewater treatment plant capital reserve this year instead of doing a separate warrant article? It's the same way it would address the issue.
You talk about, this is the warrant article that we have, that $125,000 going into annually right now.
Correct.
At a time, right?
Yes. And so you could do 100 and, let's see, it's 125, how about 175?
So basically, this wastewater treatment insurance proceeds, say, let's transfer 175,000 or whatever the number is from the fund balance to the capital reserve fund?
No, I would get rid of this warrant article altogether, completely, because all you're doing is trying to put back around $50,000 back into this capital reserve account. Right. And to me, it makes more sense to up the amount of the payment asked for than to put two warrant articles and try to explain two different warrant articles to the taxpayer.
Got it.
Does anybody have any issue with that?
No. Nope.
Okay.
And what was the proposed amount going in without this amount?
It was 125.
Okay.
And I would almost round it up to 50 and.
I think their expense request, I thought, was $62,000 for this year.
That's just comes out regardless.
Right, yeah, but it was written in there for
I think she said
some reason.
175 total.
Would be put in
Some are
there.
125 and 49 and change.
But we don't need to ask permission to withdraw. We withdraw because we're agents too. So we've explained it as the CIP did or when we speak to the voters, but it's not part of the warrant articles of the spending.
It's business.
Yep.
All right? So we all agree we're going to scratch that one and we'll add it to the wastewater treatment
Coffee?
capital reserve. That's 125. There it is. That'll go to 175. Okay, do it in that manner. All right. Okay. The next one is the pilot project senior meals. And this we were going to put on, it would be the first, it would be to run the program in the summer and to get a commitment from the community that they will support this program in one of our facilities, and then to start talking about the possibility in the future of the whole program coming to the town in our new community center.
You just had to get that in, didn't you?
I did, I just did. Does anybody have any problems with that?
The only thing is, as you read this, this does beg the question, what is a pilot?
A pilot, well, we have to explain a pilot. It would be a test of 1 year.
Dave explained it. It's the person who lands the airplane on the runway. And,
I'm glad you helped him out with that, Dave.
thank you.
Okay? Do you want to change the word pilot
No.
to something else?
No.
I think what we'll do is we'll need to define that when we explain it, and I think that's a good point.
That's right. Thank you.
The next one is the Pleasant Valley Road Bridge construction, and the number that is wrong is $755,200. That number should be $944,000. And because if you take 1,180,000 and you take 80% of it, it is the 900 figure. But Becky had some questions on how, and I think Matt talked to it.
Matt spoke to it tonight.
I was
He's
just
not
trying
sure.
to see if his numbers were the same.
Well, they're not, because the question here is we have already spent
Prior appropriation, yeah.
prior appropriations, so we're not going to reappropriate that money.
Right.
We've already appropriated and spent it, and so is the state. And so, yes, you're supposed to appropriate the full amount, but we've already spent it, so we only have to appropriate what we need to spend in the future.
Balance, yes.
Isn't that what you?
Yes, let me get with Matt and clarify that as well.
Okay.
So the number is what's...
Yes, there's the change from 700,000 to 900,000 needs to be changed, and then she is going to verify the total cost of the program. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is everybody comfortable with that? Dockside parking lot capital reserve fund. Any issues with that?
Yes, and I have some issues with some others as we go through these.
Okay, what is your issue with
I
it?
think, from my perspective, if I read this, I don't know what's already in there. What am I adding $50,000 to?
The dockside parking lot capital reserve
But
account.
where is it at today?
We need to know that.
I think the
Good point.
public would like to know,
Good point.
how much money do we have in that account now?
Point.
But it's not written in here.
Nope, you're right on.
If I had a town report, I could tell you, but you're very...
I know, but I'm just
very
saying, there's quite a few others I have the same question on.
And they had interest in them, and usually I have mine in my bag, but I don't have it tonight. Okay, so we know that that's what needs to be added to that one. The ADA restrooms at Dockside, I think it should be labeled the same as we had it last year. It's the Dockside Building Restroom Expansion and Improvement, so they understand that it's the same. And on the presentation on the CIP, that amount should be $145. And let me see what it says. And I think that also in the CIP, there is the total cost of the full project, and I think that also should be in there. I believe it's $295,000.
Yeah.
Dave?
On the dockside bathrooms,
Yep,
we're going to raise 175,000?
no, that figure is wrong. It should be 145,000.
I was going to say, because
Yes, and we're going to apply the 150,000, which was appropriated in 2018, which is part of the tax rate, and the total project, if I remember the figures right, is 295,000, and we should have that figure in this warrant article.
A little bit more money, you could build a whole band new building.
Got a prized building down there.
Our property.
It's our property.
at some point during our, whatever, this deliberation or whatever, somebody's going to ask about the docks.
The docks is down in, we have some money going into a capital reserve. Yes, you're right.
Because the stuff that I read about that was that it's $1.3 million.
Well, that's what he just said tonight.
Well,
That's to fix that.
well, I think it's got to be all of the pilings and stuff along the river,
I believe so, too.
and also the retaining wall.
I think so.
Not just the docks, because now we're getting a field from what we told people last year we were going to do a capital reserve fund for.
We need to go back to that tide and bomb report
Well,
and divide it out, right?
And I know where it is now. When I saw that number, I said, now, wait a minute. We had a top figure of about 350 or 400 grand to do the dock extensions,
Yes,
okay? Now we're all of a sudden at 1.3 million.
right.
And I said, oh, wait a minute. So it's got to be including all of those ties and stuff along the river underneath that walkway.
Yeah, and what I will do is I'll pull out my
Yeah.
So just so I'm clear, you're suggesting that appropriation that's coming up for $1 million is to deal with the Smith River cripple stud issue, realign the granite blocks, go out and extend the docks out to whatever they need to be extended to. That whole thing you think is $1 million?
Yeah.
But I believe, Dave, that the extension was not part of this capital reserve account.
It was not.
No, I'm with you
That's
too.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, yep,
People are going to get confused unless we, at some point,
yes.
either in this particular section, somebody interjects the fact in reference to the T&B report
Yes,
and separate that. That's got to be separated into the Smith River
that's,
All right.
yeah.
walkway and the docks themselves, because people are going to get confused, and then they're going to say, well, what's going on here? So,
Okay, so what we really need to do on that one is to define what we
Bill of
do
material.
in that,
What are we going to get?
well, what
need to get a
we're
copy of
saving for in that account.
So I thought we were pretty careful last year
Yeah,
of breaking those out and
did.
explaining them that way, so that we had a certain number for this one and this one, you know, and I think we need to definitely reiterate that and
because
obviously
it's
have
not in here.
Well, I think,
put that into his presentation when he does his PowerPoint and really, keep that broken out too.
Right.
It's a real good place to really identify those. And
So there's 3 projects down there that I
Yes.
believe from CIP last year when I was sitting out there that one is the platform, the parking area.
Yep,
2 is the bathrooms.
yep,
There's 4. 3 is oh my God, we found a problem at the last moment and we had to do a tie and bond study to figure out what was the situation with the wall aligning to Smith River. And 4 was what are we going to do to extend the actual physical docks out to whatever they were. Those are the 4 discrete projects. And I thought those were going to be separately defined and
we need to make sure.
funded.
Yes, we need, and Dave's right, we need to make sure that happens here. $25,000 for the expansion capital reserve fly?
Yes. All warrant articles last year passed.
We did go out with the 25. Okay, so then we really should have that one in here too, we should be giving to both of them.
And Becky, could you get Paul a copy of that G&B report?
Tie and bond report.
The tie and bond
Oh,
report?
the expansion?
No,
No.
it's the asset management plan for the dockside area.
Yep.
And it was done by Tide and Baum.
Yep.
I think it was the one that said this is what it's going to take to fix the aligning block and cripples coming out of the Smith River.
And it did, I think, 1 to 3 years, 5 to 8.
Yeah.
It gave us timelines,
Right.
immediate.
And it references dolphins. Because I said, oh, look at that, Wolfeboro has dolphins.
We do, yeah. But no sharks. There's, you can buy a T-shirt that says we don't have sharks.
I will send that along.
I know this is off subject, but since we're in the highway department, last year, if I recall, we had a warrant article to study the Back Bay sidewalk issue. And I believe we encumbered the study. In other words, we paid for the study?
I have a contract sitting on my desk.
Yeah.
Survey.
Yeah, we're going to do some kind of study to see what it would take, land taking, because there might be some eminent domain issues. But yet tonight I see on the capital improvement plan that any work to be done now is in the horizon plan, meaning it's way the heck out there.
Well, the
Are we-
horizon, we haven't even done the study yet. So we don't have anything to put it in or have any cost.
The discussion, I believe, I might be wrong, the discussion we had with the voters was study this year, appropriate in 19.
Oh.
I remember that because I remember a couple of people were very excited about the fact that sidewalk work would begin. I might be wrong. I'm just saying that, you see now, you know, we have this study. I'm off subject and I apologize. I mean, if it's going to be way the heck out there, are we studying something for no purpose?
I think this is, and Becky has talked to me about it, and she felt that the proposal to do the study had not gone out to bid, and my comment to her was, this was a warrant article that the Budget Committee did not support and the voters approved.
Yes.
Which shows the support of the voters. And even though maybe we didn't go out to on bid on it, I think she should sign it and then feel free to change how her department heads get proposals.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to come back to the voter and say, oh, we didn't have a contract and we didn't do it.
Yeah, and I agree with that. You know, there are people in that corridor, the boat museum and others that were kind of Taylor home. They were all clapping, saying good. I'm just saying there should be some linkage between the study activity and the next step.
And I agree with you. So since we're on this tangent, I'll take an extra 30 seconds to say, if I had been involved in this project and I wasn't, I would have not even started with a study. I would have started with right-of-way inquiry and or acquisition, because that's going to be your biggest burden, is getting the right-of-way on some of those front lawns, especially a 5.5-foot right-of-way if you're intending on plowing it.
Sure.
But
Becky, I thought they did some of that. That's what puzzles me. Because when we went to go do that, redo that road, I thought we did do some boundary markings.
I wonder, you know, that is very time-consuming work, is all I can say. And it's the first part of most any public works project, is getting your temporary and permanent easements.
Well, I thought that we had issued a purchase order for a survey of Bay Street, because we thought it was only a 40-foot right-of-way rather than 50. And that's where it came in from the survey. We were going to be able to tell where we needed to take land from. So I thought there was enough money to do a survey. That was the warrant article I remember, but I don't have it in front of me. But
I don't have it either, and I can't remember exactly how we worded it. This
Yeah,
would be the one night I didn't bring my
Yeah.
report.
You're losing it.
I am.
All right. Sorry for
But
bringing it up.
anyway, I think there was, I was under the impression we were doing a survey from that warrant article to see where everything was on that road and where we had to move to.
I'll make
Side of the
sure that that contract that, I'm considering signing includes right-of-way work.
Well, and we need to look to what we put in the warrant article itself, the appropriation and how we worded it. I thought we had done some of that right away when we went to do that road.
I don't think so.
When we redid the road, that we did
Down at the bridge, you mean?
up away. I mean, there's some granite markers there. I would make sure we check our files to make sure we didn't do anything. And I think we did talk about it being a difficult spot, but I think the voters, I think there is a real want in this community to get the sidewalk at least up to where the new boat museum.
Absolutely.
And if that, we need to do everything in our powers to make that, us move forward on that.
Absolutely.
You know what, Dave, and then I'm looking at this, I don't even see the capital reserve written for the docks.
Yeah,
Right.
I just noticed that too.
I don't see
There
it.
isn't one.
Okay, all right.
Add that.
Okay, we're going to have to do for the two dock.
You're talking about the dock expansion.
Yes.
I'm looking at either one of them.
Yeah,
It's not in this.
right,
We need to add those,
right.
okay?
Yep.
All right, building maintenance capital reserve, $75,000. And at this time, I'm not going to play around with any of the amounts. When we look at what the totals are, then we can do that at another point. So I'm going to leave that one alone. We're okay with the Cary Beach lot septic design. Fire truck,
Yep.
Public Works.
Yep.
Now, this one is the police vehicle and equipment capital reserve. Captain,
Chief?
we have listed here a warrant article for the police vehicle and equipment capital reserve for $103,400. Is that something you are recommending?
Yes.
And are you looking at this going on annually? Or is this going to disappear if you get your cars another way?
So, yes, that's essentially what's going to happen. So we're asking to put that money away as a capital reserve so we can purchase 2 cruisers. And in 2019, and then after we do that, we want to drop it to 1. Get us on a regular rotation where we're rotating a cruiser out and we're getting a new cruiser.
So let me get this straight. You're hoping that we'll do $103,000 this year to put in a capital reserve account and then a lesser amount every year.
That is indeed correct. That is exactly correct.
So, Chief, is that 103 going to go right in and come right out for the purchase of 2 cruisers?
Say that again.
Is that 103,000 going to go into the capital reserve account and then come right out in 2019 for the purchase of 2 cruisers?
Or actually it'd be 2020 for the purchase of 2 cruisers.
2020.
That's correct, yeah, because it'll be part of the 2019 budget, right? We're not gonna buy the cruisers with that money this year, this coming year.
All right.
So that'll be in 2020, and then with years beyond now 2020, so 2021, 2022, what we're doing is we're hoping to get on we're going to rotate 1 cruiser out and purchase a new cruiser, and that's the intent of that.
Madam Chairman, can I ask another question?
Absolutely.
So you're going to visit with the Budget Committee sometime this week, and there's been some, email traffic going back and forth about how you're going to prospectively present the need for 2 cruisers, whether they be leased, whether one of them comes out of a fund, or whether you just buy them outright. Would it make sense to not chew on this prospective warrant article right now until that conversation takes place with the Budget Committee?
No, I think we do both.
You want to do both? Okay, I'm fine.
I hear him saying, we're going to take care of the 219 budget one way, and this is setting up the
That's-
money for the 220.
That's absolutely
Okay,
correct.
all right, that's fine,
So,
that's fine, that's fine.
in the 15 November meeting we had with the Budget Committee, there were some offline discussions after the meeting was over. And one of those discussions centered around, hey, why don't you look at some other options and present those to us? And I said, hey, great, we will. That's a great idea, great suggestion. We'll take that. One of the things that the captain and I had thought about was using some of the money in the police detail revolving account, that surplus, and use that to, that'll more than purchase one cruiser and its ancillary equipment completely outright, and probably leave a tidy sum left over, and then use that money to purchase the first year of the TASER contract, which is 0% interest, right? So that $6,000 or so, maybe a little bit more, $6,100, and then either purchase or lease a second cruiser, and that would significantly lower the tax impact. That will lower the police budget tremendously, and that will lessen the tax impact.
So you've helped. This is two separate conversations, and I got it.
Right, they're
Thank you.
two separate conversations. They're connected. They are a bit confusing, but what we want to do is we want to get through the immediate issue at hand. Right now, I'm down 2 cruisers. 2 police cruisers are offline. They're unserviceable. They are absolutely uneconomically repairable. Another two are going to go that way. We know that. That was the assessment from the chief mechanic. He said, they'll pass inspection this year, but they definitely will not pass. So
got it.
I'm going to be down 4 cruisers. Okay. What we want to do is what you suggested early on. We want to get into a rotational program. This, I think, is the best way to do just that.
And so I guess, and I'm looking at the impact on the tax rate. When I see a 103, I'm talking about 5 cents per thousand. Based on our calculations. And so is there a way that one of those 2 cars that are not in great shape, is there a way to make one of them make it until 2021 and start this capital reserve account for 1 car?
No.
So that it becomes a pretty consistent, because I can tell you right now, we have, in terms of warrant articles, where we've got a large impact, and we're going to have to make some choices here, and that's why I'm asking you this question.
Yeah, we can't. There's no way one of those Crown Vics is going to make it to 2021. We'll be lucky to get through 2019 with 1.
Okay, so could you lease one in 2020 and then buy one out of a capital reserve account?
We can certainly do that. We can certainly do that. We can purchase or lease in 2020. Absolutely. But what I want to do is get onto a rotation where this is a warrant, or this is in the capital reserve. We're pulling that money to purchase 1 cruiser completely outfitted. And unfortunately, with all the equipment and the accoutrements that go with it, these vehicles are very expensive.
And I want you on that same thing too. I'm just asking you this question because we may have some hard decisions down the line.
We can do that.
And I'm just trying to figure out if we got any room there, and we may not decide to do it there, but we're going to have to do it on some of them. So I just wanted to ask you.
Right, but how we fund that.
You need 2 next year.
Yeah,
no matter how.
we need 2 in 19, and then we need 2 in 20, and then we can get on to the rotational. That's why this is part and parcel of fixing, a lot of issues with the police department, which is what this 2019 budget for me really does. It fixes an awful lot of issues. We are really looking good. If we get everything that we essentially had asked for in this budget, this fixes a whole slew of issues.
Can you give us a spreadsheet, and can you do you have numbers on all your cars? This is car 1, car 2, car 3, car 4?
Yep, we have that.
Okay.
We provided that before.
So car 1 has X amount of money, miles, life
Yes.
expectancy is to this, and take every one of your cars on down
Yes,
the
we,
line?
and I can email that to you tomorrow.
That would be good, so that'll-
Absolutely, absolutely. I can email that to you tomorrow. So just so you know, the 4 Crown Vics that we have right now, so first of all, they're not making Crown Vics no more, right? And repair parts are getting harder and harder to find. The second issue with the 4 that we have, they're between 8 to 11 years old at this point. And they all have over 100,000 miles. So,
Okay.
well,
Thank you.
That would help us. If you
Okay.
could get that to us. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
okay.
Okay, the sewer rehabilitation, I&I, it's at 300,000. That's going to come out of the settlement money. Anybody have any trouble with that?
Madam Chair?
Yep.
I would just point out that on the Public Works Director's copy, he has that one nixed out, omitted, yet Matt mentioned tonight that I&I, so I will have to check on that one.
It came through as a CIP submittal. I have a
Okay.
submittal form for.
All right?
So he may have changed his mind.
Okay.
But there was a form, and we talked about it, and
That'd be good.
so if he wants to take it out, he can. And the next one is for our pilot program. Brad and I went up and saw that. It's pretty impressive. 500,000, that's out of the settlement. Then we have the Abenaki Ski Area Capital Reserve. And there was also in here something for the groomer. And so, next page, and what I'm saying is I thought we had, in that amount that we put in each year, was, the groomer was one of the items, and we need to know how much is in that account.
Well, see, that's like all the rest of them that are not all the rest, but as Dave mentioned earlier, how much is in there already? And could the groomer come out of that?
And but this one says, this article says in quotes, purchase of equipment, groomer.
In what year?
In what year?
Yeah. But then the next one is buy a groomer.
Right.
Yes, and so my feeling is that buy a groomer probably can go, and it should be taken out of this capital reserve account, because as I remember the spreadsheet, the groomer was on that spreadsheet accounting, because we have a spreadsheet saying these are the things that we need to replace there, and what year they were to be replaced. Now, we had to change some things around because we had electric poles up there that deteriorated, and we had somebody hurt, and we had to go in and redo those. So we will need to check
Yeah,
on that.
well, on the next one, on the groomer, that article, is to see if town will vote to raise an appropriate sum of $65,000 to purchase a used replacement groomer.
Yeah, I want to eliminate that one. That just comes out.
Well, is there so you would say put it into capital reserve and then take it right out next year?
No. I think the money is there for it.
I think we needed the last 16,750 to make the 65,000.
Okay.
And then that will drain that account?
Yes.
Well, then we may want to put a little bit more to keep it.
Right.
I would like you to get the spreadsheet out. There is a spreadsheet on what and when we were to replace things.
Yep.
And how they were to come out, and how much is in there right now.
What's in that account?
Yeah, no, I agree with you,
I
Dave.
think did I read someplace that it's just not good Hoyle to put money into a capital reserve account and then take it right out the following year, the current year. It's just not.
Yes, you don't, yeah. But this Abenaki one, we've been putting the 16 in for a number of years. When we established it,
Right.
there was a list and the year we were going to spend the money.
This
So
one would be okay because it's a small percentage of the total amount that's in the capital reserve.
I don't know. That's what we need to find
Need to
that
know
out.
that.
That's what we need to find
we
out,
need to know
because we did have this electrical light issue where we had to replace poles, and that was out of sync.
Screwed us up a little bit.
Yeah, so
I just
we
read
need-
someplace you're not supposed to do that, and like, put money in a capital reserve and then take it right out.
we're-
It's kind of a way of going sideways on the operating budget.
We are trying to use these capital reserves to save money
Right.
for a future project. The wastewater treatment plant capital reserve, that's going to go to 175. We're going to get rid of it. Sure.
Question
Yep.
on that, because you don't raise up to 175, but that 50,000 or that 49 and change we talked about earlier,
Yep.
that was a check from the insurance company that's coming in, going into the account?
Went in the wrong account.
Oh, went in the wrong account.
Others came in
Oh,
and
okay.
we deposited it in the general fund. Am I right, Becky?
That's correct.
Delightful.
And in order to get it out,
Voters have to tell us.
so
So we probably, you really need to have that explanation. I think we talked about that a little bit to make sure people
Yes.
understand that we're not
the added amount is to
rectify a,
rectify.
yeah,
I like
I think that word.
I like that word. I was searching, but to rectify.
Six.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, public safety building capital reserve.
How much is in there now?
Good question.
I think it's under
question.
100,000, but we need to know.
Same question.
Same thing. We need to know the amount,
All of these, yeah.
right? The Townsend Brook Dam,
Too expensive.
I'm assuming that the Budget Committee has taken that out. If not, it's still in the capital outlay.
I haven't taken it out. I don't think they've taken anything out.
Okay.
So far.
So this one, if they do,
I don't think they've taken it
we
out.
need to do, right?
Right.
Until that time.
And this is the Townsend Brook Dam structure that was built about 10 years ago by a company that is now no longer,
Got it.
Defunct.
we're okay.
The only thing I would add to that article is that we have had FEMA come take a look at it, and they would like us to do a letter of intent, which I did do, and they said it could be considered in the June 2019 funding round. So I would only add a sentence that says, and to accept any and all grants.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Yeah, why not?
But I think
That's
on
good.
the end of most of these, we add that language. If you look at what we did on our other warrant articles, I think we always say that we'll accept any kind of grants that come in.
Yeah.
I'll put my book in, they're written there. Okay. And the electric substation and feeder line, we're going to need to have a public hearing on this.
And this is a 3-year appropriation, if I understand the CIP, right?
No?
Well, I don't see 3.6 million bucks in Barry's CIP for next year. I see 1.13 in 2019, 1.126
I think it's up at the
in 2020, and 1.33, and they're all related to the substation and the feeders.
the feeders.
Unless I misunderstand, this looks like a 3-year appropriation.
No, I don't think it is.
I added the words non-lapsing. It does say on the next page, on page 8.
Yep.
If you look on the top of your sheet,
Yep,
first item,
yep.
Phase 5 voltage conversion substation.
Yep. Where's the 3.36 million? I can't find 3.6 million out of that.
Oh, I see what you're saying, then that's the wrong amount.
I don't know. We need to double check. I think it's, you know what, Linda? I think what it is if you look at how he's waterfalled the projects, all right? You look at the 2019 for 1.1, the 2020 for 1.26, and the 2020 for 1.3. I think the sum of those is the appropriation he's going after.
But that's not what the CIP talked about.
Okay,
That's
well,
why I'm having the
Okay.
problem, is because we only talked about the 219 at that amount. So
Yeah.
that's a very good question to ask on that number.
because
That's not what,
that's a lot of money to spend in 1 year. I think he doesn't, it's the substation and the feeder. Anyways, so the number, is it 3.6? If it is 3.6, is it a 1 year, 3 year appropriation?
I think that the only thing Barry asked for was a substation this year.
Well, then this number has to change.
I think that
That
is,
should be the 1.13.
I think so, and let me look at the report itself.
And
That's what we remembered, that's what I remember we talked about.
I think that we should set a date for a public hearing, but it's not clear to me whether that is going to be bonded or whether that is funded from surplus.
From the CIP discussion, it said, and Matt said tonight, it is a bonded project.
Yeah.
Sure.
We need to know what the total nut is. Is it a multi-year appropriation? Yep.
To do with my CIP. Where's that?
Okay.
It was one of the last ones. 1, 3, 4.
He doesn't talk about it being bonded at all in his
Yes.
description here.
It does at the end of it. In the CIP, it was 1.13 million, and it says CIP committee in 2019 bonded enterprise fund, right here.
I was reading his, the page we're going through here.
Well, this is
Doesn't
something,
say anything about, so we gotta, like you said, look into it and
yes,
just figure
this
it
one
out.
was written by Becky. This was done by the CIP.
Yep.
Correct, Becky?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Gotcha.
and I think that's the difference, but that needs to be checked.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, again, my simple math is if you sum the 3 years of capital, the three $1 million years, you come up with his appropriation request. And they're all tied to each other. You can't do one without the
No,
other.
he only asked for one,
I understand.
right? I understand, but that's, I'm just looking at what Barry came in and asked.
All right.
And I,
All right. So we're missing 2 dock capital reserves.
Yep.
I'm gonna clarify that.
And there was also a water resource capital reserve.
Yeah, I know. I did the warrant before we got into that a whole lot.
what's that?
That is the one where we're going to spend it was in relationship to cyanobacteria.
Oh,
And it was to do some testing, some education. It was listed out,
right.
the 3 things, and it wasn't on here, and the amount was 50,000 because we pulled out, originally it was higher, and we pulled out the Partridge Road and put it up in the road construction.
Yep.
That is the other one that needs to be added here.
We also talked about adding the other 2 dockside.
Yes.
The other 2 docks.
Yes, there are 2 docks.
Missing 2 docks. Cap reserve for the cyanobacteria.
And so 50,000 on the water quality.
Yep.
And the other 2?
One is for the expansion.
Yep.
In its capital reserve, and the other one is for the, dock repairs. I'd have to look and see what they were called.
Wall repairs, or that
It was
part of the
we
shoreline
called it something.
repair.
If you get out the 2007 annual report, you'll get the way we worded all those warrant articles. Get them
Last year's,
moving.
Got it.
Okay, and then this probably should go back on the agenda for December 5th, and we'll go through it again.
No scrutiny.
By the 19th, we should, the Budget Committee's going to want it before then. And I don't think we're ready for a final.
This is going to be a busy week for the Budget Committee.
I'm looking at, yes, I'm looking at when we need to send this. I think they're looking at it, the 13th of December?
Yeah.
So we only have the 5th. We don't have the 19th to approve it, and I don't think this is a form.
Go squeeze another meeting in to,
We may have to just
to deal with that.
just to deal with
Put one
that.
there.
Yep.
Okay, Becky?
Yep.
Shall we tentatively do it for let's look how the dates go.
This is a Wednesday, right?
What day?
The 14th, and they're going to do the warrant articles on what day?
I don't have my budget book with me. I think it's the week
If we met the
before.
following Wednesday on the 12th.
12th.
12th. I'm not sure.
Yep.
I don't think everything's
We go to the budget committee on the 11th. Not going to be able to do that.
the 11th. 11th of December?
Yeah. It was my meeting to cover.
Okay.
What were you covering? What was the topic?
All right, we'll go back and we have next meeting to fill that in. So we're looking at the 12th, and I think, I have warrant articles for the Budget Committee on the 13th.
I think that's right.
So we could, if we met the
I think
12th.
they wrap up, I think the 11th is when they're doing general government and they,
No, general government is the 6th,
6th.
because
They wrap up on.
I'm going to do that, and I
They
can't.
they
go
want to
to
do
the-
warrant articles, I think, on the 13th. I think that's right.
So let's make a schedule a Board of Selectmen's meeting at 6:30 on the 12th, and we're going to have one thing, warrant,
Articles.
okay?
Anything between now and then? And then we have a meeting on the 5th?
We have a meeting on the 5th already. Okay,
On December 12th,
December 12th, yeah,
We have a meeting on the
6:30.
6:30.
And a social meeting on the 14th.
That's right. When we get into the new year, we're going to be so glad not to see each other. Okay. Is there any, we have to keep on going through this?
You got the last one?
That was the last one, but I was talking about the agenda.
Oh, the agenda. Okay.
I was almost asking for us to adjourn. You know what?
Old and new business.
How do people in committee reports, it's almost 9:30, shall we keep our committee reports until the 5th?
Yeah,
Everybody okay with that?
sounds good. Yes. I'll get,
Will we adjourn?
I was just,
Well, we've got some other business, okay.
going to bring up, Dave talked about, I'm going to meet on the 11th there in the Budget Committee. I have an issue on the one on the 29th I was signed up for, which is Thursday.
Okay,
I'm leaving that morning for New York. That's for the water and sewer budgets at the Budget Committee level there, so.
okay, the 29th, I'll pick up, I can go. All right. All right.
Being an enterprise fund. Because I don't know if the hydrants is going to come up on that one.
Yeah, they're coming up.
They've been chewing on that one. Right?
Yeah, I know that.
It's like, when are we going to talk about the hydrant, please? Like,
Yeah, I'll try to cover that, Brad.
Good idea.
They're very well prepared.
Twins turned a year old on Saturday,
gotta
so
be
we're
there.
driving down.
Yes. Yeah, no problem. All right. Remind you that non-public on Wednesday at 5. Are you okay with
I
that?
can make it, I'll be here for that. I might, and then we're supposed to stay for the Budget Committee, all of us.
You don't have to.
Because I have to be at 6:30, I've got to be back up to Austin
Yeah.
for water sewer budget there. And if it looks like it's going to be busy here, I'll come back after that and see if we're still here or
I didn't
not.
see that there was that much on the, I can't remember whether they were doing
Anything for us to
hydrants.
sign?
I think that may
No, John Burt took it.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so everybody's comfortable. I'll hold my last night Wolfeboro flyer until then. So unless somebody else has something else, can I have a motion to adjourn?
on the table. Already
Oh,
made.
all those in
Third, fourth,
favor?
fifth.
Aye.
Aye, out we go.
Good evening, Mr. Senator. What was it?